7th in the nation in that category. They are bad on all fronts, and that starts with the quarterback position, something that they had a lot of confidence going into the season because Jackson Arnold was supposed to be their future for the next 2 to 3 years before going off and being a top pick in the NFL draft. Now he's currently riding the bench and probably going to transfer at the end of the year.
Yeah, I would assume. I think Jackson Arnold's going to redshirt. This kind of, I mean, seriously, is this not just like the Spencer Rattler, Caleb Williams situation to some extent, although it just happened much earlier in the year? Look, there was so much hype around Jackson Arnold coming into this season, and then things kind of just fell on its face once you got to the Tennessee game. And since then, Michael Hawkins has been the starting quarterback for OU. Now, I did talk to an OU reporter from with the On3 site and stuff, and I kind of asked about Hawkins and kind of what to expect. And this is a direct quote. He's trying is the most positive thing you could say. Hawkins Jr. is showing plenty of heart, but it's not resulting in a lot of positive things. So from what I gather, it just seems like, he just doesn't seem like he's trusting the plays to develop to be able to take shots downfield. Didn't that sound like South Carolina a little bit a few weeks ago when they didn't really take many shots downfield? So, look, there's a lot of problems with this OU offense. It's obviously their defense that's going to keep them in this game. I do think South Carolina's got the better offense in this game. I think they got the better overall scheme. But OU, I mean, look, we'll see what happens, but South Carolina's defense should really be able to do well against this offense.
And that quarterback situation is a mess because, again, they put all their eggs in the Jackson Arnold basket. And even through those first couple of weeks where they were beating non-conference opponents, there just wasn't a comfortability with what Jackson Arnold was doing. He was turning the ball over. He just didn't look as efficient as they wanted him to. And like you said in the Tennessee game, or excuse me, the game a couple weeks ago where they finally decided to make the change and put Michael Hawkins in there. And the difference between the Spencer Rattler situation, the Caleb Williams situation from a couple years ago, like Rattler was making some mistakes, but he wasn't like playing terrible football. Jackson Arnold was playing bad football. Michael Hawkins has come in and he's not really played all that better. He hasn't really turned the ball over, but he's not exactly lighting the world on fire. So I don't see a huge difference between these two guys. But I was listening to an Oklahoma podcast yesterday. They were kind of analyzing the quarterback situation, and it's almost like they're playing damage control now because in their mind, at least, the two guys that do cover the team like you guys do over at Gamecock Central have the mindset that Jackson Arnold's probably going to transfer at the end of the year, preserve a year of eligibility. So that ship's kind of already sailed. Now they're looking at Michael Hawkins as the future, so they're not wanting to upset him either by saying, okay, well, you're not playing all that much better. We can't go back to Jackson Arnold now, so we're just going to keep riding with you and hope you continue to develop.
It wouldn't have been so much nicer to just say, hey, Dylan Gabriel, please stay for another year. We don't want you to go. Like, think about how much different we'd be talking about this game right now if Dylan Gabriel were still at Oklahoma and not Oregon. Like, I think we'd be talking about a potential Oklahoma blowout this weekend. But look, they have a real issue, like you said, at quarterback. Like, Jackson Arnold honestly just wasn't that impressive when he was out there, but neither is Michael Hawkins. He's only thrown for one touchdown this year. You were right about the fact that he doesn't really turn the ball over at all with no interceptions or anything like that. But it's like he's been sacked 9 times. I mean, Arnold was only sacked one more time, and I mean, he's obviously played a lot more snaps than Hawkins has this year. I just don't see how Oklahoma is going to do well offensively against the South Carolina team. Now watch Oklahoma go out here and score like 40 points or something and figure it out magically. But I will say, like, South Carolina, just you got to keep going with the same game plan you've had lately of pressuring the quarterback like you have up front and then get into the backfield, make some plays, and then let your DBs do the rest from there and let them play out there in coverage because they have done a really good job lately. And I think the South Carolina defense is continuing to trend in the positive direction.
The Dylan Gabriel angle of this is interesting, and Brent Venables addressed it a couple weeks ago in one of his post-game pressers, or one of his weekly pressers, excuse me, where, he basically said, hey, Dylan Gabriel wanted to play closer to home, that Oregon's closer to Hawaii. Sure, okay, why not? But, he didn't necessarily say, hey, we pushed him out the door, which he's not going to admit to that. But they weren't exactly begging and pleading for him to stay, from what it sounded like. They were very confident that Jackson Arnold was going to be the guy. And, yeah, he had the pretty shaky bowl game performance when he got to start for the first time against Arizona. But they thought, hey, offseason, he's going to get better. And once you get into the season, he's going to be good. And that obviously has not happened. And that's the fine line that a lot of programs walk now, where you say, okay, are we willing to spend another year with a veteran guy that can maybe get us where we need to be and risk angering our, potential superstar young quarterback and let him transfer out, or to go ahead and make the switch now, let Gabriel go off and play his final year somewhere else and just hope that this guy that we're leveraging our future on is going to be him. And obviously it's not working out for Oklahoma right now.
That's the risk that you run with that sort of thing. And I think the big thing is it's kind of like, well, not really, honestly. It's kind of like the Spencer Rattler, Lenore Seller situation. The only difference is Rattler didn't really give you much of a choice because he went to the NFL, which who can blame him? He had a great year last year.
Yeah.
Go to the NFL while you can. The difference is Gabriel, and we don't know what really happened behind closed doors, like you said. Again, they're never going to admit what actually happened. Maybe years down the road, but who cares by that point? The point is, Oklahoma really did put, like you said, all their eggs in the Jackson Arnold basket, and with no real – I mean, Michael Hawkins is like, what, your safety blanket, essentially? Is that really what you want? Like, you don't have a firm answer after Arnold. And now everything's kind of working out to where Jackson Arnold's going to probably either transfer, redshirt. He probably isn't coming back to OU next year. And you got to ride out with this Michael Hawkins thing for the rest of the year. And then you reevaluate the quarterback position in the offseason. The beauty of college football now for teams is that it's like free agency. You can go into the portal, go find your next quarterback of the future. Wonder how they got Dylan Gabriel? The transfer portal. Jalen Hurts, Kyler Murray, all these guys, not Spencer Rattler, but all these guys, transfer portal. Like, that is the way OU is built. And it's funny that we talk about OU now having such a great defense versus a terrible offense. Like, what has gone on? Because, look, I know Brett Venables is a DC and stuff, but OU has always been that team with the really top flight offense and the really terrible defense. But now the roles are reversed, and you see just how much worse this team is. And I think the record really doesn't indicate how they are, because 4-2, they really are much like a South Carolina team, except I do think South Carolina is the better football team, in my opinion.
Well, and what's interesting about this quarterback room, we talk so much about Jackson Arnold and Michael Hawkins. They also have Casey Thompson, somebody that has been around college football for a long time, started at Texas, went to Nebraska, was at FAU last year, and now is in this Oklahoma quarterback room. But going back to listening to that podcast that I said yesterday from Insiders of the OU program, that goes back to the thought of, well, they don't want to anger Michael Hawkins, where, yes, if you made the change to Casey Thompson right now, you might help yourself in the short term, but he doesn't have any more eligibility after this year, and that might, make Hawkins mad and make him want to leave. So again, they're having to move all these chess pieces around, hoping for the best of their future on somebody in Michael Hawkins that still has not proven himself yet.
And the other thing with Oklahoma is it's not even just Michael Hawkins that's the problem. Like, it's like that's one phase of it. The run game just really hasn't been there, in my opinion, this year. Like,
well, they don't have an offensive line either.
That's the thing, man. They have so many problems. Like, they don't have a great run game. Their offensive line kind of just stinks. I mean, they are similar to South Carolina in the sense that they have a lot of problems. Although I think if you look at it, I think South Carolina has the better quarterback. I think they have, obviously, the better run game. Receivers, I think you can argue that, a guy like Deion Burks is kind of on the same wavelength as maybe some of South Carolina's top flight guys. But, I mean, at the same time, I just think South Carolina's got the better offense out there with more weapons. And when they are clicking, like you saw it last week, man, and we've seen it with the LSU game and stuff, as long as this team doesn't shoot themselves in the foot with penalties and turnovers and stuff, they can do some really nice things. It is not an accident that they ran into a 16-play, 85-yard drive. It's not an accident that Mazio Bennett is wide open on a wheel route for a touchdown. Like, they're doing a lot of good things. It's just, can you get out of your own way? And like they keep saying all week with how close they are, knock the door down. We'll have to see if they can do it this weekend.
Yeah, you realistically should not allow Oklahoma to score more than 14 points in this game.
Oh, and that should be enough to win the game. If you're holding them to 14, you have no excuses offensively not to.
Absolutely. And again, just don't shoot yourself in the foot, and South Carolina should be fine. We'll take a look at that defense that Oklahoma does bring to the table, because they do a couple things really, really well that can cause problems for South Carolina. We'll dive into that coming up next. It is the Extra Point. Tyler Head and Jack Beltry along with you on your Wednesday here on The Game. Tyler Head here for our friends over at Twin Peaks. We are in the midst of the best sports month of the entire calendar year. And one of the things that makes it so great is what's going on with Major League Baseball and the League Championship Series going on right now. The Yankees taking a 2-1 lead over the Guardians in the ALCS last night. You can catch all the great action of the NLCS and the ALCS with our friends over at Twin Peaks down in the Vista. You can catch every pitch with those 29-degree draft beers and all the amazing food. World Series coming up in just about a week's time, and you know Twin Peaks is going to be packed to the gills for everybody seeing who's going to be taking home the trophy at the end of this long Major League Baseball season. Again, TV as far as the eye can see, 29-degree draft beers and all that delicious food with our friends over at Twin Peaks, your perfect destination to watch playoff baseball down in the Vista. Welcome back in. It is the Extra Point. Tyler Head and Jack Beltray along with you here on your Wednesday. We'll dive into Oklahoma's defense here in just a second, but want to let you know the brand new craft beer card has arrived. Now only $59. Saves you about $300 on craft beer here at local establishments in the Columbia area. Go online to 1075thegame.com and click on the Sweet Deals tab to purchase the brand new craft beer card, again, for just $59. Jack, as we mentioned before the break there, the strength of this Oklahoma team is obviously its defense, but its defense is more opportunistic than anybody else. It's not this dominating on all fronts kind of defense. They're not really all that great against the pass. They're pretty decent against the run, but what they do the best is getting to the quarterback, where they are 10th in the nation in total sacks with 19, as well as taking the ball away, where they have 14 on the season, which ranks 7th in the country. So managing those two areas is going to be key for South Carolina. And what have they struggled with this year? Protecting the quarterback and putting the ball in harm's way. So that is a concern going into this weekend, where we said South Carolina has to avoid shooting themselves in the foot.
Yeah, that's the real problem they might have this weekend is, look, the offensive line hasn't really shown you like they're getting better. Like the 4 sacks last week, and going back and watching the tape, I would wager to bet that all of them were on the offensive line, specifically Casey Henry and Josiah Thompson just really getting beat off the ball. It was ugly. Like Casey Henry got pushed to the ground and stuff. Josiah Thompson just let guys get by him, and he had the highest PFF grade somehow. So
I was going to ask you about that.
It was weird, man.
I don't know how they came to that conclusion, because if they watched the same game that we all watch, you would not have guessed that.
Not. Like, I think Josiah Thompson's going to be fine. Like, it's like there's a reason why he was such a highly rated recruit coming out of high school. It takes time, like all things, to adjust over time and become like that, SEC offensive tackle South Carolina's needing. I didn't see a performance that was the highest PFF grade. No way. Like, you go back and watch, it's just, I think maybe like 2 or 3 of the sacks that Sellers took were on Thompson. The other one, I think, was on Henry. So the point is, Oklahoma, like you said, very opportunistic. They are going to be attacking Sellers. They know, like all teams know at this point by now, Sellers has a fumbling issue. They're going to try to exploit that this weekend and bring him to the ground. It would not shock me if Oklahoma sacks him 4 or 5 times in this game, and you just hope South Carolina makes enough big plays to score. Because, look, they gave 5 sacks basically last week, except the last one that was negated by a face mask penalty.
Yep.
You ended up scoring 25 points. So you can work around it. It's just taking sacks versus taking sacks and fumbling the ball are completely different. So which is it going to be this weekend? Is it going to be the way where you're just going to the ground and you're trying to throw the ball away and it ends up being a fumble, or are you going to take the sack and just live with it and fight another day?
Let's go back to what Coach Beamer said yesterday at his presser. Cut number 4 here, Dave. This is him talking about the ball security issues as they get set to face this opportunistic Oklahoma defense this weekend.
Yeah. One, they're 7th, and I think we're 12th in the country in takeaways. So it's going to be a battle of, we got to get some takeaways ourselves, because I think turnovers in a game like this are huge. We saw that last week in Tuscaloosa. So for us, we always emphasize it every week in practice. We do multiple things about it. So you don't really change what you're doing, but you certainly just continue to just coach it and the details of how we want to get the ball out and how we want to protect the football as well, not just on offense, defense, but special teams. We knocked the ball out on the kickoff the other day against Alabama, and would have, when we going into that game, Alabama's kickoff returners had fumbled the ball 3 times on returns this year. So we challenged our guys to go get number 4, and we knocked it out, and we just weren't quite able to recover it. So I think it's emphasizing it like we're doing. But then I think on Saturday, it's going to be about, just straining and finishing plays. And that's the thing that jumps off the tape when you watch Oklahoma's defense, is just how hard they play. And, they're flying around, and so many of their sacks, so many of their turnovers have come on just unbelievable effort, where a guy gets blocked twice and just refuses to stay blocked, and he gets off 2 blocks that they're basically double teaming him, and he sacks the Auburn quarterback or sacks the Tulane quarterback or whoever it might be. So we've got to play with great effort and play with great technique on all 3 phases.
And Beamer mentioned once again that Oklahoma's 7th in the nation, takeaways 14. Over half of their takeaways come via fumble recoveries. They are 2nd in the SEC when it comes to forcing fumbles, and 1st overall when it comes to recovering them, with 8 so far on the season. And again, when you look at the issues that South Carolina's had, yes, Lenore Sellers has thrown interceptions this year, but more along the lines of just keeping the ball in his hands, especially when he's got pressure on him, and even at the mesh point with some of these handoffs with guys like Rocket Sanders. And again, you really hope he learned from this past weekend against Alabama, going back to the play where, he's going to the ground and just flings the ball up into the air, which, yes, could that have been called an incomplete pass? Sure, but it was called fumble on the field, and there was not enough evidence to overturn it. So it's those kind of things that, yes, you don't like taking sacks, but sometimes you just got to hold on to the ball and go down to the ground because that is the best for that situation as it is unfolding. So you hope he can learn from the Alabama game and not make those same mistakes this weekend, because Oklahoma will take advantage of those.
And I think he is a very smart quarterback to know, like, hey, going back and watching the tape, I know what I did wrong. I can't be doing that again. Like, he's a guy that I feel like doesn't make the same mistake twice. Like, in some cases, the fumbles have been it's kind of been a hit or miss thing. And I think for Carolina this weekend, again, I don't know what it is that just has led to the fake handoffs leading to fumbles. Is he rushing it? Is it just not holding onto the ball tightly enough? I don't know. You got to be able to correct that somehow. And Beamer did say, like, you have 3 or 4 days to correct it. You better correct it, because it really will come back to bite you in a game like this. And look, the last thing you want to do is give Oklahoma a short field, because that only makes it easier for them to go down and score on offense. And this is probably going to be a game where I think it's like you got to get to 21 points to probably win this game. Whoever gets there, it's probably going to be by way of turnovers. In South Carolina, we know they could force turnovers. We know they could sack the quarterback and make big plays. We got to see them win that turnover margin this weekend, because this Oklahoma defense is tenacious. Now, the one thing I will say, this benefits South Carolina to some extent. You go back to the Texas game last week. Oklahoma missed 15 tackles. And granted, I think they did a pretty good job against Quinn Ewers in the passing game, but you also gave up a ton of rushing yards. And, Texas ran for 177 yards and 3 touchdowns. Doesn't that bode well for a South Carolina rushing attack, which is obviously their strength, and a Rocket Sanders that had a really nice game last week? I think it's going to be hard to bring a guy like that to the ground, and that could be the difference in this game. I think Rocket, he really could be what makes the difference in a South Carolina win and loss, just because of how physical he is as a running back, as well as the other guys they have in that running back room that kind of played well last week.
And we saw that display from Rocket Sanders a week ago, where especially late in the game when they were handing the ball to him, that long drive that scored right after halftime, it featured a lot of Rocket Sanders running the ball, and he was churning. He was getting an extra 2 to 3 yards even when the pile was on top of him, essentially, and especially when he broke outside and got some space, which we know he thrives, and he was able to break off some decent runs. So if he had that kind of performance against his Oklahoma defense, which again is decent against the run, 40th in the nation so far, but not like dominant top 10 or something like that. So if he can get his this weekend, that should hopefully help the rest of the South Carolina offense fall in line.
And what was the big key with Rocket getting those big runs on that drive? Third downs. That has been an issue for South Carolina through those first 5 games. That said, they were much better this time around against Alabama, and they went 7 to 15 on third downs. That one drive we talked about that Rocket ended up scoring on, the 16-play drive, I think South Carolina converted 5 times on third downs, and a lot of those were Rocket Sanders running the football. So I think you got to get him going this weekend, but also you need to convert when you have your chances. A lot of these points South Carolina put up, they had to make the difficult plays, and that is what it's going to take against this Oklahoma defense. It's going to be their toughest challenge of the year, but I think they're definitely ready for it.
And big reason why South Carolina was able to take advantage on third down is because they had their best down and distance to go in third situations at 6.1, which is the best on the season, as they've been averaging around 3rd and 9 so far. So big key for this weekend as they head into a tough environment in Norman, Oklahoma. And Shane Beamer obviously knows it very well from his time coaching there. We'll hear his thoughts on what it's going to be like coaching against that crowd in Norman coming up on Saturday. Coming up next, it is The Extra Point. He is Jack Belcher from Gamecock Central. I'm Tyler Head on your Wednesday on the Game. Tyler Head here for our friends over at Canty Foundation Specialist. I tell you about it all the time. You need to keep a close eye on things happening around your home, because if you start to notice some things that are a little bit off, it could be signs of some serious foundation issues going on with your home. Things like cracks in your exterior brick, cracks in walls or above windows and door frames, doors and windows that might be sticking a little bit, uneven or bouncy floors, or cracks over your garage door. If you're experiencing any of these issues, you need to get with our friends over at Canty Foundation Specialist so they can come out and evaluate your home and see what kind of foundation issues you might be having and make sure they get you the help that you need so you and your family can live comfortably going forward. Go online to schedule an appointment today at cantycanfixit.com. Again, they'll send somebody out to evaluate the issues and make sure they get you fixed up right. Again, cantycanfixit.com for our friends at Canty Foundation Specialist.
Sends one high and deep to center field. Did he get it? Back on it is Thomas. He's at the wall. He got it. It's a two-run home run. Aaron Judge finally connects his first home run of this postseason. And he makes it 6-2 Yankees.
Welcome back in. It is the Extra Points Hourhead and Jack Beltry along with you here on the game. That was the call last night in game number 3 of the ALC, or game number 3 of the ALCS. with the ALCS with the Yankees and the Cleveland Guardians. Aaron Judge hitting the 2-run homer in the 7th inning to help elevate the Yankees to that victory. And I can't think of a better thing for our laying the wood segment than literally laying the wood to the baseball, as Aaron Judge did, like you heard, for his first home run of the postseason.
I mean, my goodness, man, he had just. He had started finally putting the ball in the air a little bit, but we know postseason Judge just hasn't really been there. But he finally got into one last night. And look, overall, I thought the Yankees did their job. They won 2 games in the Bronx. They're up 2-0, going back to Cleveland. The interesting part is now Cleveland is the best home team in baseball, but the Yankees are the best road team in baseball. So worlds are colliding. And, I mean, these 3 games are going to be really crazy, and we'll see what happens. The series is definitely not over yet.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And again, you have the 2-game advantage right now with the Yankees as they head to Cleveland for game number 3 coming up tomorrow night. Garrett Cole was on the mound last night and probably didn't last as long as many people thought he was going to. He kept getting into those bases loaded jams, and the Guardians certainly made you sweat. But again, once Judge is able to come up there and hit that home run, it was kind of smooth sailing from there. And again, the Yankees look like they're in prime spot and make their way back to the World Series once again.
I'm knocking on wood. I've seen this way too many times before. 2-0, whatever the case might be. The Yankees don't get to the World Series in my lifetime, except 2009 and 2000. But, we'll see what happens. Cole didn't shove last night. But, again, the bullpen has been fantastic for the Yankees. And the other thing is the Yankees are getting to Cleveland's bullpen. That's the strength of their team. They're getting to them in the 3rd, 2nd inning. So continue to do that. Make the key hits when you get them, and let the bullpen continue to deal, and it'll be fine. Clark Schmidt's going to start game 3, so former Gamecock. We'll see what happens.
And again, that game 3 coming up tomorrow night. You'll get game number 3 of the NLCS coming up tonight between the Dodgers and the Mets, series tied at 1 apiece. That game will be on Fox Sports 1. Get back in the conversation about South Carolina going to Oklahoma this upcoming weekend. Of course, Coach Beamer, very familiar with the environment there in Oklahoma from his time as an assistant under Lincoln Riley's staff. Let's get cut number 9 here, Dave. This is Coach Beamer talking about playing those tough environments like they're going to have this upcoming weekend.
Sorry. Yeah, you went from a hostile environment and one of the great storied programs of college football and one of the great stadiums in college football last week in Tuscaloosa to now we get to do that again this week as well. And we talked about it this morning in our team meeting, just because none of our guys have been there, and other than Davis Bevel, who transferred from there, but just the tradition and what the stadium's like and all the great traditions that they have there, the Sooner Schooner and the Roughnecks in the end zone that shoot their shotguns and everything. I mean, it's just a really cool place. But I would hope that, last Saturday, never once, and I'm not knocking Alabama, but never once did I feel like our team was affected by the crowd noise and the environment. I never felt like there was a time where our guys just looked up and were like, oh my God. If they did a great job of disguising it. And I would hope that Saturday would be the same thing. We know it'll be another hostile environment. They sell out every home game every year. Saturday will be no different. But I think just the experience of, okay, we've been to Kentucky, we won, we played in front of went to a stadium Saturday that was a lot more people than what we've went up against in Kentucky and Lexington, just the size of the stadium. We did okay from handling the crowd for the most part. And I think just kind of going back to Jordan's question with Lenoris, it's the same thing with the whole team in regards to just the experience of being on the road and being able to handle road environments as well.
Now, when we talk about road environments, in his time as head coach of South Carolina, he is 5-11 in true road games. An area that they've struggled in. Now, they've gone on the road and beaten the likes of Clemson as a ranked team that was on the foot of the college football playoff, so it's not impossible, certainly. And again, we think South Carolina on paper is the better team in this matchup, but that environment does factor in. And you have an Oklahoma fan base who, is probably not obviously feeling great about how things went last weekend against Texas, but technically speaking, all their goals are still in front of them right now, sitting at 4-2, so they don't have any reason to be lethargic necessarily.
Oh, no. Look, Oklahoma, like you said, if they win this game, they're still in a pretty good spot. They have a lot of issues, but this is seriously, this is like a get right weekend for either team here, and whoever wins, they're in a much better spot moving forward. Now for OU, they have the advantage. They're at home. It's gonna be a whiteout. Do we know yet if they're gonna be wearing? They gotta be wearing like crimson this weekend, right?
That is a good question. Let me check and see.
That's the thing about whiteouts that I don't really understand is that you have them at home. And most teams don't wear white jerseys at home,
right?
Unless you're like LSU or something. Like Penn State, when they have the whiteout, they always wear their navy blue tops with the white helmets and the white pants. OU obviously is synonymous with the crimson, just like Alabama is and stuff. So I wonder, like, do they wear the whites? I mean, I don't know. Their whites are clean, having the Jordan logo and stuff. I think Jordan, with all that it's pretty nice. But I don't know. I don't know what Carolina would wear. Like, I guess you go with the Stormtroopers. I'll just say right now, the Stormtroopers, they looked kind of sick. I'm not gonna lie.
Yeah, it's amazing what a difference in face mask color can do. And
the stripe.
And the stripe. I thought the white from head to toe was a really good look this past weekend against Alabama. And I don't know, maybe that's worth a couple of points of swagger, if nothing else there. But I saw a lot of positives from that. And I'm assuming that, like you said, Oklahoma's going to be wearing their crimson. Now, maybe they wear the throwback uniforms. I don't know what they call those things, but they wear those things quite a bit. So maybe that's going to be a part of it as well. But nevertheless, it's going to be a tough environment. And this has been a key for every road game ever in the history of football is trying to take the crowd out of it. And one thing that South Carolina can do, if you can get up on them by multiple scores and that fan base is well aware of how inept their offense is, there's going to be a lot less belief they're going to be able to win that game if they're suddenly down 14-3 or something like that in the second quarter. So getting scores early and keeping them off the board, big key for taking the crowd out of it.
Yeah, no, most definitely. Look, if there's any stat to really measure how tough this environment is, maybe this isn't the best stat to look at, but College Football 25, it's the Gaylord Family Oklahoma Memorial Stadium, which is the home of the Sooners, the 8th toughest stadium to play in college football, according to College Football 25. So look, it's a video game, but obviously they do their homework over there at EA to see who has the toughest environments. And look, South Carolina went toe-to-toe with Alabama. Keep in mind, this is also a 11:45 a.m. kick Central Time. So Another early kick. They went to Tuscaloosa last week at 11 a.m., handled that environment really well. I think Oklahoma's going to be getting up a little bit more for this because it is their whiteout game and stuff, and it should be a really good crowd. But nevertheless, South Carolina was able to handle what I think Alabama has a crazier environment, in my opinion, even for coming off a loss. I don't know. Oklahoma, I know those fans are loyal and stuff, but I do think South Carolina control the tempo. Get out to an early lead if you can, even if you fall behind. They fell behind 14-0 last week and came back. So there is a chance. I think it's just more so about when it comes down to it, be able to finish the game. Don't let them back into it, because when you make mistakes like you did last week, letting Alabama back into it, you paid the price.
You've gotten to go to quite a few SEC venues. Where does this one rank on your excitement level of seeing what the OU atmosphere is going to be like?
Quite honestly, man, I know nothing about Oklahoma in terms of atmosphere and stuff. So I've seen them on TV. I think it'll be cool. I don't know yet. Ask me again on Monday.
Okay.
On Reaction Monday, I'll give you my list of stadiums I've been to and where this one ranks.
Well, hopefully you're talking about a dull atmosphere, because South Carolina just went out there and dominated and they had no reason to cheer all day.
No, I think South Carolina is going to be able to handle this atmosphere just fine. Again, it just comes down to control the environment. Get out to an early lead and just don't let them back into it. There's going to be adversity in this game, but I think Carolina is definitely ready for it.
Of course, we're in the midst of football season, but basketball not too far away. Coach Barris speaking at SEC Media Days for basketball yesterday. Let you hear a little bit of what he had to say and start kind of peeking ahead to what this basketball season is going to be, to see if they can capitalize on the momentum of going to the NCAA tournament this past year. It is The Extra Point. Tyler Head and Jack Beltry, along with you on your Wednesday here on The Game.
my fashion style, while it's been non-existent my whole life, it's developed into the old quarter zip here, as you can see. I think there's a Twitter account that's got its own Twitter account, my quarter zip, and I think it is probably based on my unrelenting and unwavering commitment to the almighty quarter zip and its overall versatility as a clothing garment.
Welcome back into the Extra Point. Tyler Head and Jack Veltri along with you here on your Wednesday. That, of course, was the voice of Coach Lamont Paris speaking at SEC Basketball Media Days yesterday about the phenomenon that is quarter zip that has obviously been sweeping Columbia here for the past couple of years, but now is garnering more local and national attention. Like I think people around the SEC are now very aware of this, that this has become a thing. And I've said it many times, I love and respect Coach Paris's commitment to the bid at this point because he's wearing it in July when it's 95 degrees outside. There's nothing that's going to prevent this man from wearing a Q-zip.
Dude, he was wearing it when he was the celebrity starter for the Ole Miss game, wearing that in that heat. Mm-hmm. I got to respect it because literally I don't think I've ever seen, like, obviously on Google, I'm sure, but like I haven't seen, anytime I've seen him in person, he's wearing that quarter zip and like nothing else. The commitment is crazy.
The one time I remember seeing him in something else was when they went out of the country last year, and he did like the Zoom media thing, and he was wearing like the traditional like Hawaiian tropical shirt. But I think that's the only time I've ever seen Lamont Paris's actual arms.
Yeah, he probably has like a skin tight quarter zip or something. Just it's invisible. You can't even see it, camouflage. I don't know.
Again, the season will be getting started here in right about a month's time, as South Carolina tries to, at the very least, get back to the NCAA tournament for a second year in a row. And much like last year, though not quite as low, picked towards the bottom of the SEC in the preseason SEC media poll, picked 11th. So if Coach Paris needs another chip on his shoulder to motivate the team, well, there you go. They're handing it to him on a silver platter, it seems like.
Yeah, look, what's the saying? If they like us, they like us. If they don't, they'll pay the price. Like, again, I think this is not where I would personally have South Carolina in my preseason poll. I didn't get to vote for whatever reason. That's okay. But I would have South Carolina probably above Ole Miss and Mississippi State, to be honest. Maybe like right behind Kentucky. Like, I think South Carolina is getting overlooked again. And I think people are thinking, the thought process probably is, okay, they did it last year. It was kind of a fluky year. Are they going to be able to do it again? I think that's the biggest question a lot of people have. And I don't know if they get back to 26 wins because what they did last year was just historic and stuff for South Carolina purposes. Mm-hmm. But I do think they have a great team coming back. They do have more talent, I think. The big question I have is you lose a veteran like Talon Cooper, BJ Mack, Michi Johnson's the scoring type. I think you'll be able to replace him. But the veteran leadership is a whole different animal. Do you have the guys that can kind of get you through the tough times when things are tough this season and you are facing adversity? That's the biggest question for me.
And the thing about Talon Cooper really stands out to me. And let's just say Talon Cooper had another year of eligibility and he is coming back. How much of the perception of this team changes where, again, he was regarded as one of the best guys running the point on offense in all of the SEC last year that all the other coaches were talking about leading into games against South Carolina. Now you bring in Jamari Thomas, who again has a lot of experience himself, not as much as Talon Cooper has, but you don't know if he's going to be able to fill those shoes the exact same way. If we weren't having this question about that spot, would South Carolina maybe be a little bit higher up in people's minds, you think?
Probably. If they had some of those guys running it back for next year, like if Talon Cooper and BJ Mack were back this year and they weren't out of eligibility like they are, I think you'd be looking at this team a little bit differently. But at the same time, they are gone. You have to replace them, and I think you have. The one thing I will say is Jamari Thomas, without really seeing much of him on the court as a South Carolina Gamecock, he's much more of a scoring guard. He reminds me much more of Michi Johnson compared to Talon Cooper because Talon could score, but not like at a high rate. Like, he'll get you his double-double type numbers, but he's going to be much more of a floor general and stuff. I see Jamari more as that scoring guard. And so I wonder, how does that play? Because, they're going to need someone to distribute the ball. And I just don't know who that guy is going to be. Is it Jamari? Is it maybe like someone else? I don't know. Is it Jacoby Wright? But I think Jacoby is more of that sixth man off the bench. And then you have some other guys maybe fill those shoes.
And last one for you here has got about a minute left. Obviously, Conor Murray-Boyles came in and really set the world on fire in year number one after, missing roughly the first third of the season because of the, because of the illness there. But when he came in, he was obviously as advertised and that much more. How big of a step forward can we expect or need him to make this year to help lead the South Carolina team the way we think he can lead it?
I think he's going to be a huge factor in South Carolina's success this year. Look, he had a great year last year, but the one thing I will say, and this is the one thing I've always talked about with this team, is when you get down to those final games of the year last year and you were in the paint and you went up against these elite big men, you really didn't stand much of a chance. That's not a knock on CMB. He's a great player, but he just didn't physically match up well against these bigger guys in the paint. I expect that to change this year. I think he is definitely got a lot to prove. He's picked third team all SEC, and this is a guy we're talking about as maybe like a lottery pick in the NBA draft next year, and he's only getting voted to the third team. I think he's due for a really big year, and combined with him and these other guys that they brought in like Nick Pringle and Jordan Butler, and you got BBV coming back and stuff, I think you can really be that physical team in the paint that wins the rebound battle and wins a lot of these, big plays in the paint.
Season gets tipped off in just a couple weeks. On Monday, November the 4th, they take on North Florida. They have an exhibition game a few days before that against Coach Paris's alma mater in Worcester on Wednesday, October 30th at Colonial Life Arena. And they'll be off and running. And obviously, Jack, you'll be up and down the road with this team the entire season. Hopefully see them get back to the NCAA tournament once again.
That's the goal, man. That's the goal. I think they got the team to do it. We'll see what happens, though.
Hour number one of the Extra Point in the books. Coming up, hour number two. Let's talk with the guy, Dimitri Venos, about what's going on with the Carolina Panthers and how Xavier Legette is being utilized with the team up the road in Charlotte. Jack, we'll check in with you tomorrow as we continue to preview South Carolina and Oklahoma here on the Extra Point.
Yeah, sounds good. Thanks so much, man.
Hour two coming up here on the game.
Hey, I want to tell you about our new show sponsor, PL Wine Pool and Spa. They're an award-winning swimming pool builder that's been in the business for 25 years with more than 40 years of pool construction experience. They service the entire Midlands area, whether you're looking for weekly cleaning maintenance or chlorine to salt conversion with services like safety cover installs and safety fence installs. You can check out all their offerings at the showroom in Lexington, South Carolina, and talk to their experts about any and everything you might need. Their retail store is located right here in Lexington at 5541 Sunset Boulevard. Again, that's 5541 Sunset Boulevard in Lexington. And you can also check them out online at plwinepools.com.
10 o'clock, welcome back in. It is hour number 2 of the Extra Points Hour. Head along with you as we do each and every Wednesday, checking in with our guy, Dimitri Ravanos, who, of course, is a Alabama alum himself, who had quite a range of emotions watching this game, much like we did here in South Carolina. And I had the theory coming away from the game that most Alabama fans were probably going to be more upset than South Carolina fans, despite the fact that they are sitting at 5-1 and still in the top 10. But, man, this does not look like Alabama football this year.
No, and here's where I differ from a lot of Alabama fans. Am I upset? I mean, I'm frustrated, right? Like, because it's not what we've gotten used to the last 17 years. That being said, Tyler, it's actually kind of fun to not be done with a game in the third quarter. I mean, don't get me wrong. Like, I am just as anxious as everyone else during the games, but I haven't written a final verdict on Kalen DeBoer yet. Now, Kane Womack, the defensive coordinator, he could get the hell out of Tuscaloosa as far as I'm concerned. But I'm actually having fun this season. I
perused the Bama online message boards after the game, which, again, message boards are the extreme of the extreme when it comes to the fan base. But I came across a post that I was particularly interested in where, somebody was essentially talking about being in the end of the era and saying, we could go 9-3 or we could go 12-0 or somewhere in between or somewhere worse. And said, hey, bud, welcome to the rest of the world that college football's been dealing with for the past 15 years while Alabama's been sitting on top of the mountaintop. Like, it doesn't last forever. Welcome back to reality.
No, I mean, look, the fact that the reality for Bama fans had been like last season was a quote unquote bad season because they had all these problems and were out in round 1 of the playoff. I mean, that is that extended reality, that being what you live in for 15 plus years is what gets you to serious debates about whether or not the coach is wearing the right kind of shirt on the sideline.
Well, if they don't pick up the win this weekend in Knoxville, he may not just want to return to Tuscaloosa come Monday because that wouldn't go too well.
You know what's crazy is you are not the first person I've heard that from, and my reaction to all of you is, what on earth makes you think they have a chance to win this weekend?
Oh, I'm picking Tennessee, but I'm just saying, I mean, the fan base is not going to take that very well.
No, they probably aren't. Like, I'm a gambler. My buddies are not. And all of them have been asking me, like, oh, the line is moving up. We're -3 right now. What do we not know? And I keep telling them, like, I don't know, but don't jump on it.
Yeah.
Like, for God's sakes, don't jump on it until it gets to the highest possible plus number for Tennessee, because they're going to win this game. Let the money line number go up to make as much as you can.
We'll see what the reaction is coming away from third Saturday in October if Tennessee can get their second win in the past 17 years.
The second win in the past 3, also second win. In the past 17.
Switching gears now, I want to talk a little bit of Carolina Panthers as they're having their own struggles so far this season. Firstly, though, I have to ask, if David Tepper did a weekly radio interview on one of the local Charlotte affiliates, how long would it take for him to threaten to fire the host asking him questions?
I can tell you Dave actually does have a favorite radio host in Charlotte. And I would guess it's because it is the guy least likely to ask him those questions. I don't think Dave would threaten. I think Dave would just do it behind the scenes. Dave is not like Jerry Jones, right? Jerry Jones is entrenched, and when he makes threats to Dallas radio hosts, like, Jerry's a character.
Sure.
Dave wants to be beloved. Dave desperately wants to be beloved. It's why whenever someone brings up how bad not only this team is, but also his soccer team is, he'll tell you about how great it is that concerts are coming to Bank of America Stadium now.
Yeah, because that helps you win games, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Again, as I mentioned, the Panthers now sitting at 1-5. Of course, the past couple of weeks they've had Andy Dalton in a quarterback over Bryce Young, and Dalton seems to have started to come back down to earth a little bit, which was to be expected. Nobody expected to play him at a high level for super long. Is it going to be a switch back to Bryce Young? Do you stay committed to Andy Dalton? Like, which way does this go as you get deeper into the season?
I guess it depends on what your long-term plan is for Bryce. I mean, let's be 1,000% clear. The offense looks so much better with Andy Dalton, and I think some of that is just the confidence that comes with having been in the league for, long enough to be 37 and still in demand, at least as a backup in the NFL. To me personally, like, we are now staring down the barrel of the trade deadline. November 5th, I believe, is the deadline. I don't know why you're not thinking about moving Bryce unless you just think, hey, Dalton's going to be 38 at the end of this season. We're definitely not bringing him back. We don't want to waste more draft picks on a quarterback. Let's see if we can salvage this thing.
What could you get for Bryce Young realistically?
A sixth, probably. I mean, look,
Yeah.
and I know that there are Panthers fans that will scream, don't trade him because of the whole sunk cost fallacy thing, right? It's not just what you gave up to the Bears to get the first pick in 23. It is all of the draft capital that has been spent not just on Bryce, but on Sam Darnold, on Baker Mayfield. Like, I believe when they made that trade last year, it took the number to 11 picks in the last 4 years that the Panthers have given up to find their quarterback, and they've been unsuccessful thus far.
Taking a look at things here locally, of course, we all focus on what Xavier Legette's been doing in the NFL, and he's kind of come on here as of late, had his big game against the Bears a couple weeks ago, got his first career NFL touchdown. But these past couple weeks, his targets have dropped a little bit. Did have a touchdown this past weekend against the Atlanta Falcons, but it seems like maybe the ball's not going his way quite as much, despite the fact that he's been pretty efficient when he does get the ball thrown his way.
Not only that, like, you have seen, I think, the best of him in both ways. That touchdown that he caught last week was pure up in the air acrobatics, right? Like, we saw that a lot in Columbia. You know what else we saw a lot in Columbia? Just throw it to him on a slant and let him go. Mm-hmm. And we've seen that with the Panthers. I can't tell you, Tyler, what exactly it is that is going on. He's had 25 targets in 6 games. 10 of them came in that loss to the Bengals, right? So that tells you that through the other 5 games, he is averaging 3 targets a game. And I don't get it. I don't get why Jalen Coker, who is an undrafted free agent, has become a more, or I guess a earlier read in the progressions for Andy Dalton than Xavier Legette is. I mean, this is, look, you go to who is open, right? Like, you cannot change that when you're a quarterback on the field, but we traded more assets because this was the guy that Dave Tepper and Dan Morgan felt like we needed. And for whatever reason, they're not utilizing him in the way you would think they should. I mean, if I'm trading up for a rookie wide receiver, I'm hoping to get him 6 or 7 targets per game. On average.
And when you talk about the trade deadline coming up here in a couple weeks, is wide receiver one of the spots that they're potentially looking to add somebody at that point?
I don't see how, if you're the Panthers, you could be looking to add. I think it is all a matter of what it is you would get back from teams elsewhere that are looking to add. And I think that Deontay Johnson is going to be a very popular option for some of the teams that missed out on Devontae Adams. Here is my pushback on that: is we cannot keep hitting reset every single year. We cannot keep hitting reset. Since Andy Dalton has come on, Deontay Johnson has come on. Deontay Johnson has been one of the few things that reliably every week is really exciting to watch about this team. I don't think any of us thought we were signing up for a flip this house situation on the guy. To move him would be really disappointing because I don't think you are going to get back a package that would make sense. I was arguing with my friend Nada Edwards, who is part of the Eye on College Basketball podcast. He is a big Panthers fan. And he said, well, if you got a 2nd round pick and another day 2 draft pick for him, it's like, okay, let's live on earth. That's not happening, right? The other name that now you're hearing because Jonathan Brooks has started practicing again is Chuba Hubbard. And I mean, that would literally, Tyler, be a slap in the face. There have been games in the last 2 seasons where he looks like the only member of the team that has not given up. And I think if you are trying to improve this team and you think Jonathan Brooks is the dude, wouldn't you want to keep Chuba as the spellback as opposed to just getting rid of him entirely?
You would think, but I think if they do get rid of Chuba Hubbard, who is, I believe his deal comes up this upcoming spring, that probably sets the tone that it's kind of a fire sale and they're trying to sell off what assets they can and see what they can get for them if they do end up doing that.
Yeah, I mean, and look, fire sale is not really what we have seen Dave Tepper do here in his time as the owner, no matter how bad it gets. I think the other thing to remember, too, which is why, like, you got to think that Chuba is a reasonable piece that could be moved. You mentioned it. The contract is coming up. Also, it is an attractive contract to take on. The reason that Chuba is the subject of trade rumors and not Miles Sanders is A, the production, and B, they way overpaid Miles Sanders and guaranteed him too much money last year.
Right. Yeah, so we'll see what they decide to do with that. We're 6 games into the year for Dave Canales, and you mentioned, not wanting to hit the reset button.
Jesus Christ, we're only a third of the way through.
I know, it's crazy, but Frank Wright only got 11 games a year ago. Canales, obviously a young head coach. Things have obviously not gone great through the first 6 games of the year. Like where does Canales stand right now? Is the seat warm? Is it getting hot? Like, are they going to give him the time, or is reset coming on the horizon again?
Yeah, I think they'll give him the time because Frank Reich was supposed to be a just add water kind of hire, right? That's why when it looked as bad as it did through 11 games, it was kind of a no-brainer to get rid of him. I think that between not only the fact that this is Canales' first NFL head coaching job, but there seems to be a strategy now to the front office. And look, Tepper is a businessman, right? He's got to know the perception is if you are not giving coaches more than 1 year, you're going to be back in this situation where, look, Dave Canales, not only were the Panthers the only team to offer him the head coaching job, they were the only team to interview him. Like, if you really saw something in Dave Canales, that's fine. If it was the best thing available to you, that situation's not going to improve by firing another coach after a single year.
And again, the Panthers don't look like they're on their way to making the playoffs this year, but right now the NFC South being led by the Falcons and the Buccaneers, both sitting at 4-2, which this division has been kind of the doormat of the NFL for the past couple of years, where routinely you just got to get at or above 500 to win this thing. Are you surprised with the strong start that those two teams have had so far? And the Saints got off to a really strong start, but have fallen off in the past couple of weeks, and it certainly looks like a better NFC South than what we've seen the past couple of years.
It's hard to tell, right? Because the NFC overall looks pretty bad. The Eagles look really bad, and I'm not entirely sure. I wouldn't say they're a playoff team at this point. Same with the 49ers. I am not surprised so much by the Falcons. I'm a little more surprised by the Buccaneers just because the Baker Mayfield experience has been peaks and valleys, and he seems to have figured out something sustainable. It's not the best we've ever seen him, but he does look like a week in, week out starting quarterback in the NFL. And honestly, Tyler, that's the team I grew up rooting for. And when the Panthers drafted Bryce, part of what made it easier to move over is because, to me, in 2023, signing Baker Mayfield is a way to tell the rest of the NFL, hey, we're not tanking, but we're also not trying.
Right.
Well, I mean, look, egg on my face, right? I guess I was wrong.
Yeah, he's found a good place down there. And talk about peaks and valleys. I mean, they experienced all those in one game on Sunday against the 49ers, against the Saints, excuse me.
Yeah, it's the Buccaneers experience since the last Super Bowl year, since the 2020 experience, has been when they look good, they look like a team capable of doing damage in the playoffs. But when they look bad, man, they look really bad. And that included the years with Tom Brady, too.
Yeah, no, absolutely. It's been an interesting NFL season so far, and we'll check in with you next week and see if Alabama, if the Tuscaloosa is still standing at that point in time, depending on what happens in Knoxville on Saturday.
Look, it's got to be. I promised my son I'm taking him to his first game this year, and it's the Missouri game. So, if the town is not standing, we're going to have to figure out something else to do.
I appreciate it as always, man. We'll check in with you next week.
All right, buddy. Good talking to you.
It is the Extra Points Hour head along with you on your Wednesday. We'll take a look at that Alabama-Tennessee game as well as other things going on in the SEC this weekend, as it's a bit of a statement Saturday going on around the Southeastern Conference. That's up next. It is the Extra Points Hour head along with you here on The Game. Welcome back into the Extra Points Hourhead along with you here on your Wednesday on the game. Looking ahead to this upcoming weekend, talked about this a little bit with Dimitri in the last segment. It is the third Saturday in October. Alabama going on the road to Knoxville to take on the Tennessee Volunteers. And this is one of the games we circled coming into the year in the SEC as this elite heavyweight fight. A game that was going to have both college football playoff and national championship implications on, which team comes out of this game victorious. I don't think anybody foresaw both these teams going into this game a little bit shaky, maybe even more than a little bit shaky, to say the least. I'd say neither fan base is all that confident, or at least is not as confident as they thought they were going to be when this game, was placed on the schedule when it came out all those many months ago. It's well documented what we've said about Alabama. And look, you knew going from Nick Saban to Kalen DeBoer, there were going to be some changes. It was going to look different. It wasn't going to be the same complete dominance that the Saban era had, which even then, towards the end of it, wasn't quite the stranglehold that it had in college football for so long. But these last 3 games for Alabama fans had to have taken just years off of their life. Even going back further than that, what he did against South Florida and messing around with them for 50 minutes before finally pulling away in the last half of the fourth quarter there was a stressful game. You get the Georgia game where you're feeling good up 28-0 and 30-7 at halftime, but Georgia, of course, comes back, takes the lead before Ryan Williams goes out there and does what Ryan Williams does and helps you win that game. But a bad 2 quarters of football nonetheless for the Crimson Tide. What happened 2 weeks ago against Vanderbilt, well documented. Then, of course, South Carolina doing everything but win that game on Saturday to where this fan base is looking around saying, man, we've played 10 not bad quarters, but 10 below standard quarters of football over these past couple weeks. That concerns you as you go in there to take on Tennessee, a place that last time Alabama went on the road there, guess what? They lost. Yes, that was the first time Tennessee had beat them in, at that point, 15 years, but they threw the goalpost in the river and, created one of the better field storming scenes we've ever seen in college football. And a very good chance that could happen again on Saturday. But on the flip side of things, you have a Tennessee fan base that is not nearly as confident as they thought they were going to be going into this game either. And that all stems from Nico Iamaleava, who, again, was poised as the guy to run this Josh Heupel system of offense to a T. Something that Hendon Hooker did 2 years ago and something that Joe Milton was not able to do to the same effect last year, which is why Tennessee did kind of come back down to earth a little bit. But the hype around Nico Iamaleava had many people there in Knoxville believing this was their chance to make a run for the college football playoff, national championship, and all that kind of stuff. And, he comes out of the gate looking amazing against UT Chattanooga and NC State and Kent State. But as soon as he started playing SEC teams, those numbers came down quite a bit. Do you know, in the 3 SEC games that he started between Oklahoma, Arkansas, and Florida, he has only 1 touchdown pass and 1 interception? He had, was Deontay Thornton hit for that long touchdown against Oklahoma, which helped them win that game. But for the most part, he's been pretty pedestrian. He's completing under 60% of his passes, or right at 60% of his passes over the course of those 3 games, and hasn't done anything overly spectacular in all of them. And again, Tennessee was held scoreless in the first half for the past 2 weeks against Arkansas and Florida. So not quite the magic they were necessarily expecting on offense, but that is what the interesting dynamic of this game is, and way different than we would have talked about this game in years past, where Tennessee comes in with the much more dominant physical defense, and Alabama probably comes in with the better overall offense. Now, which way this game goes, who knows? I'm picking Tennessee. I can go ahead and tell you that, but if Alabama won the game, I'm not going to sit here and tell you I'm going to be overly shocked by it, but they're not playing the level of football that we expect from Alabama, and their defense is not what it has been in years past. So if you have to look for an advantage about 2 teams that are very uncertain, I always go to defense. And I think Tennessee's got the much better defense in this instance, and that, I think, will end up being the deciding factor come Saturday in this game coming up in Knoxville. That game is at 3:30 on Saturday. It is the lead-in to the main event of the weekend and one of the premier games in college football for this entire 2024 season, with Georgia going to Austin, taking on Texas Longhorns. First time these two teams have faced off since the 2019 Sugar Bowl. That was the game where Sam Ehlinger famously said the "we're back" thing that ended up being a meme for a couple years. But Texas is back now. Texas is legitimately the program that they once were, 20 or some odd years ago, at the top of college football as far as relevancy, coming off of a college football playoff appearance and doing everything they need to do up to this point to make you believe they are that good again. That being said, this is the highest caliber opponent they've faced all year across the board. No doubt about it. Yeah, you faced Michigan, which was a really good defense. Yeah, you faced Oklahoma, which is a good defense. But neither of those teams had the offensive firepower to have to pose any kind of threat to Texas, and they didn't. Texas won both those games pretty handily, but Georgia comes in as a team with the ability to really test this Texas defense and show it what it is truly all about. And this, to me, is more than just important for the overall scope of the SEC with how this game goes, but really for the scope of college football as a whole. Because the theme of this college football season has revolved primarily around parity, right? Like every single week, we're watching, or seemingly every single week, we're watching top 10 teams lose to unranked teams. We're watching surprise after surprise. We're watching really good teams struggle to put away teams that we think they are leaps and bounds better than. There's been so much parity. Nobody has established themselves as a true dominant force in college football this year, with the exception of Texas. Out of all the teams, and there's only two Power 4 conference teams left undefeated, that being Texas and Oregon, but even Oregon, despite winning against Ohio State this past weekend, showed some inefficiencies early on in the year, taking on the likes of Idaho and taking on the likes of Boise State. So they are not a perfect team. Texas has been relatively unblemished this year. Yeah, they've had some slower starts against the likes of Mississippi State, but by the end of the game, they end up winning those games exactly how you expect them to. If they go in and they dominate Georgia this weekend, I think we can crown them as the true dominant force in college football for this season in this year of parity. Because if they can handle Georgia, there's no other team they shouldn't be able to handle. But if they lose to Georgia, if the Dogs go into Austin and pick up this win and even things out with everybody in the SEC having at least one loss, then I think we're looking around truly saying, I have no idea who's going to win the national championship this year. And from an entertainment standpoint, that's phenomenal. You know what I mean? Like, if you're just removing your fandom from the season, whether you root for Carolina or whoever else, the entertainment value every single weekend has been incredible because you don't know what's going to happen. And that's been the mark of so long for college football is we know the usual suspects, the Alabamas, the Ohio States, more recently, the likes of Georgia, Michigan before this year. They're just going to win more often than not and going to be one of the handful of teams competing for the national championship. Now it's wide open. Now it is truly, it feels like anybody's game. If Texas falls this weekend, we'll put them right there in that category of a good team, but a team that is subject to lose games. And not only do they have this tough test at Georgia this weekend, or against Georgia this weekend, they still got to go on the road to Arkansas. I don't know, Arkansas is not, a team that strikes a lot of fear in people's hearts, but they're playing good football right now. They could realistically be a ranked team if they'd not shot themselves in the foot on a couple different occasions. But Taylor Green, when he's healthy, plays good football. Texas still has to go there. And, of course, they still have to go to Texas A&M, the team that is really flying under everyone's radar so far in the SEC, for that Saturday after Thanksgiving for what is going to be a tumultuously hot crowd for that game in College Station, as they've been frothing at the mouth to get their hands on the Longhorns for over 10 years at this point in time. And that game could be where a lot of dreams go to die for the Texas Longhorns if they're not able to get past Georgia this upcoming weekend. But again, from a purely entertainment standpoint, this year's been fantastic so far. And this past Saturday, October 12th, lived up to the preseason hype that was placed on it. And this upcoming weekend, October the 19th, has a lot of hype placed on it as well. And hopefully it will live up to that just like this past weekend did. Reminder, tomorrow, it is Thursday. Carolina Calls with Coach Beamer and Todd Ellis at 6 o'clock here on the Game in Columbia as well as in Myrtle Beach. And then after that, NFL Thursday Night Football, the Spencer Rattler-led Saints play host to the Denver Broncos. A little bit of a Sean Payton Bowl going on there. Pregame coverage starting tomorrow night at 7:30 right here on the Game as well. It is Wednesday. That means we talk the latest of NASCAR in the midst of their playoffs with Jen Jensen from the early game. That's coming up next here in the Extra Point. Tyler Head along with you here on the Game. Welcome back into the Extra Points. I'll head along with you on your Wednesday here on the Game. And as we do each and every Wednesday, time to talk some racing with Jen Jensen from the early game. As we are in the midst of the NASCAR Cup Series playoffs, we have concluded the round of 12, 4 more races, 8 more drivers vying for the coveted Cup Series championship. You know, we always kind of tout the Roval as being this like super wild card of a race where there's a ton of chaos and a ton of calamity. And for the most part, we actually got a pretty straightforward race on Sunday without too many shenanigans.
No, I think the racing was strong. I like what they did on the one turn, and tighten things up a little bit. And as far as there was opportunities for passing, some really good strategic passing within the race. All overall, tire strategies, fuel strategies all played into it. And I thought we were treated to a really, really solid race.
I was concerned kind of looking at the optics of what they had done with, I think it's technically turn 7, where you go from the infield onto the oval's first turn, which they essentially created into a hairpin,
yes.
Which that to me screamed dive bombs. A guy's going to get punted left and right, and there's going to be some kind of, chaos or controversy coming from that corner. But I will say it provided a lot of good passing opportunities. You had to choose the inside or the outside, both of which could work depending on how you took that corner. So I got to say, tip of the hat to the Smith family for that one, because I think that worked out the way they wanted it to and created a lot of action in that area. There was certainly some contact and some spins and stuff, but it didn't get to level like stupid that I thought it was going to.
Yeah, I was concerned that maybe that was where like a bunch of people would, bunch up, and like we'll see sometimes in a big turn 1 that has a hairpin type turn.
Right.
And no, we really didn't see that. We saw some pretty solid, really tight passing, and that was really fun.
And at the end of the day, Kyle Larson, no surprise, ends up winning once again, leading over half the race and picking up the win. He was already advanced into the round of 8 based on the points he earned earlier in the race, but obviously does himself a little bit of help there by getting 5 extra playoff points. And this, he won this race in 2021 en route to winning the championship that season, and seems like he is right now the favorite to win it all once again this year.
Yeah, I think he's had a couple bad things happen to him so far in the playoffs, and it almost seemed like, okay, it's time to put on a clinic. We're going to show you how it's done. We're going to dominate. I'm going to lead over 60 laps, and I'm just going to take control. And there's going to be nowhere. Even though, again, like you said, during the race, it was radioed to him that hey, you've already gotten in and all that. It's like, I don't care. Yeah, I'm in, and I'm going to show you guys that there's a reason why I've won a championship.
And for the most part this season, whenever they don't run into trouble, they are legitimately one of the fastest cars each and every week. And I look at how the round of 8 sets up. He's won at Vegas. He's won at Homestead, Miami. He's won at Martinsville. Like, one of these 3 races is almost guaranteed, unless he runs into a problem, to be a victory for him and finding his way into Phoenix to once again fight for a championship here in a couple weeks.
Yeah, I think he's definitely one of the favorites to keep an eye on for sure. And it's, looking down the whole thing, okay, you still have 300 cars in. Penske's still strong in here. Gibbs is still strong. And Reddick, look at him. He's still making his way and fighting back with everything that happened to him during the race.
So that ended up kind of being the story of this race at the very end, was following Reddick having to fight his way through the field. They had the caution that came out when Austin Dillon lost his tire with about 20 laps to go, and that set up the run to the checkers. And Reddick had already bent the toe link in his car early in the race, had to replace it, and it just didn't seem like they had the pace they needed to fight their way through the field and make up those spots. Billy Scott, give him credit, his crew chief, decided, hey, let's bring him in, put 4 tires on this thing, and that's our best shot at making up positions, which they did. And did themselves even better by getting +4 by the end of the race, and at the time racing themselves in for the final playoff spot over Joey Logano. Little did we know, about an hour and a half to 2 hours later, things would take a bit of a turn when it was discovered that Alex Bowman, who had really been performing the best out of everybody in the playoffs so far as playoff points and consistently running up front, was a little too light in post-race inspection and got the boot instead.
Yeah, we all got a little education on the post-race inspection, and I do like when they explain everything for those who aren't as familiar. Okay, we gassed it up, we emptied the gas, we did it again.
Yeah.
Like they give them plenty of chances to test everything out to make really sure that there is a problem. And by the end of it, too light.
And look, the next gen car, they are very strict on what you can and can't do to it. They do not like you to manipulate the car, and they're very harsh when you do those kind of things. The weight thing is very bizarre, though, because, of course, if you start the race at the correct weight, it's very hard to lose that weight during the race. And there was a very clear video from early in the race when Alex Bowman jumped over one of the curbings and slapped the outside wall coming to the start-finish line. There were parts and pieces flying out of the car that many people believe to be some tungsten, which is very heavy and could have been the difference in that weight, which made it all the more weird that Hendrick Motorsports chose not to appeal this, which, of course, you can, if you're penalized or found to have failed post-race inspection, you can appeal it and potentially get your stuff back as the week goes on. But even with that evidence, they chose not to appeal it, which surprised me a little bit, because even if you know you're not going to get it, why not take a shot and see if you can continue on in the playoffs?
Yeah, and all that does is just kind of adds to the speculation of what do they know, what happened. So I'm with you. It really surprises me, especially being, a powerhouse group, that they would not have tried to challenge that more. So I don't know. Then you have the other controversy where you got Keselowski and Buescher and the roof rails, and Denny Hamlin having a fit about that. And oh my gracious, always drama.
Well, the beneficiary of the Bowman drama was Joey Logano, who, again, at the end of the race, thought he had been bumped out by Tyler Reddick, who tore his way through the field with those 4 fresh tires, and then about 2 hours later finds out, hey, you're actually in. And it's funny because when you look back, Joey Logano won the championship in 2018. He obviously won again in 2022, and now it's setting up for him potentially to sneak his way into the Final Four once again, despite the fact he's not really had the best season. And that's kind of been the mark of his 2 championships in past. Like, he was not thought of as a championship favorite, but did what he needed to do in the playoffs to get himself in position to take advantage when they got to Phoenix. And the as luck may have it, he's right there in that position again, where Logano may just steal one here at Phoenix in a couple weeks.
Yep, I don't count him out either, because again, he was a champion for a reason, and he always seems to kind of make his way through as well. So I think he can make it to the Final Four. I think there's something about him that's where he'll head, which means I probably have cursed him, and now he won't.
Well, the funny thing is, 2 years ago when he won the championship in 2022, nobody picked him as a favorite. And when the round of 8 opened up at Las Vegas, he went out there and won. And that provided him 2 extra weeks to prepare and get ready for the championship 4. And they went out there and smoked the field at Phoenix. And I don't know if I'm picking him necessarily this weekend, but, when you have that kind of new lease on life, sometimes you perform better, and you go from thinking you're down and out and no shot at winning the championship to now miraculously being back in. I don't know, that 22 team might have that golden horseshoe shoved up somewhere that is guiding them along this year.
I 100% agree. I really am excited about the Vegas race, because I think there are a lot of storylines that are being set up. So I'm looking forward to it.
Well, what's interesting about this round is this is really the first round of the playoffs that's not really a wild card, right? Like, we had Atlanta and we had Watkins Glen in the first round. A lot of chaos between those 2 races. Obviously, we had Talladega and the Roval these past 2 weeks. This is really the straight up round. You're going to go to Las Vegas, where you got to have good speed and a good handling car to win there. Same thing with Homestead, Miami. And then Martinsville, the penultimate race of the season, where track position and qualifying and all that kind of stuff is going to matter a lot. So it really rewards the best of the best to see who can punch their ticket to the championship 4 coming up here in a couple weeks.
Yep. We've gone from just full drama and full uncertainty to more, again, strategic in how everything is done, and how people execute the races. And I agree with you. I think it's all going to be strategy based, not luck based.
Well, and I like the way that the round of 8 sets up here, because before Bowman got bumped, we did actually have the top 8 points earners on the entire season still alive for the championship. Logano's obviously the anomaly there now because he has not had the best season. But again, 7 of the top 8 point earners are still alive, with Larson, Bell, Reddick, and William Byron sitting in the top 4 going to the round of 8, and then Blaney, Hamlin, Chase Elliott, and Joey Logano on the outside. But you're talking about all these guys, with the exception of Chase Elliott having multiple wins this season. It's anybody's game. Any of these guys are certainly viable for winning this championship. And man, I can't wait to see what happens over these next couple weeks.
I know, me too. I'm really looking forward to it. And I think Vegas is going to be a good time. So what a way to start off that final 8.
We'll see. We're under a month away from the season ending. It's been a fun year. It's been a quick year, but hopefully we're treated to some good racing in the round of 8 and the championship 4.
Absolutely. Looking forward to it.
Well, this time next week, we may be talking about somebody already punching that ticket into the championship four and break down Vegas and start looking ahead to Homestead Miami after that.
Yep, looking forward to it.
Absolutely. Appreciate it as always, Jen. Today's the Extra Point. We'll come back and we'll wrap up today's edition here on your Wednesday on the Game. Welcome back in. It is the Extra Point. Tyler head along with you here on your Wednesday on the Game. Appreciate everybody checking us out on the Game TV, sponsored by our friends over at Shepherd's Glass and powered by Integrated Media. Of course, you can go to youtube.com, search the Game TV, and check us out all day long. Of course, you can also listen to us on the 107.5 Game app as well. Just go to your app store, give it a download, and take us with you wherever you go. How do you feel about Alex Herrera? I just want to pose that question because coming away from Saturday's game, I saw the most amount of comments about the kicker that I've seen so far this season. And look, this is something we've talked about a lot. Terry and I have talked about it a lot. We've talked about it with the Gamecock Central guys. This has been a consistent concern throughout the entire year so far. And I think it really kind of reached a bit of a boiling point for a lot of people on Saturday, with Herrera missing the 51-yard field goal in that game that, of course, would have been very valuable considering the fact that South Carolina ended up losing by, 3 points in that game. And I understand where you're coming from with that. You're not wrong for your, for your anger in regards to that. But I want to listen to what Coach Beamer had to say yesterday. Let's go with cut number 13 here, Dave. This is Coach Beamer yesterday at his presser being asked, essentially, I know you see Herrera doing good things in practice, but he's been shaky in the game, so to speak. Here's what Coach Beamer had to say about that.
Yeah, you stay the course. We constantly compete. We've got other guys in practice that are competing with Alex, just like all of our positions are competing. But I also don't want to lose sight of the kicks that he's made this season as well. He's made a lot of big kicks as well, and it's always a pressure kick if you miss it, but he's made some big kicks as well that nobody talks about also. So I see the positive, and then, we can all be better, and he'll be the first to tell you that as well in regards to how we perform. We can all be better, and himself included. But to me, it's looking at the total body of work and realizing that, he's done a lot of really good things for us this season as well with some of the kicks that he has made.
And I didn't expect Coach Beamer to throw his kicker under the bus. That is not something you should do. And there are other guys on this roster that have the ability to place kick as well. William Joyce, who was battling with Alex Herrera in the offseason, as well as Mason Love, who has the ability to kick as well. And it's clear that those guys have not done what they need to do in practice to warrant becoming the place kicker, or else that move would have been made. And unfortunately, sometimes you just get the shorter stick when it comes to what you have as a kicker, and you have to adapt to it and deal with it as the season goes along. And Beamer is right. He has made some kicks this year. He's 8 of 12 on the season so far, but the majority of those 4 missed kicks are pretty glaring at this point in time. Missed the one against Old Dominion. Again, you still won that game, and 26-19 would have looked a little better than 23-19, but it didn't make the biggest difference in the world. And more than anything, it just it would have put Old Dominion in a situation where they would have been trying to tie the game with a touchdown there at the end, as opposed to trying to win the game with a touchdown if they had that opportunity at the end of the game. Okay, first game is college kicker. Well, I think a lot of us kind of wrote that one off. No big deal. And moved on from that. But then you get the LSU game, and of course he misses the kick that would have sent the game into overtime. Now again, he's not helped out by penalties and those kind of things that put him in less than advantageous situations, but he still missed the kick. 2 weeks ago now against Ole Miss, where I wouldn't have kicked the ball, honestly, because I think being down 24-3 and 4-6 aren't really that big of a difference, but nevertheless, got trotted out there to try and give this team something in the second half. Ends up missing that kick, and of course, the offense didn't really do a whole lot much of note after that. So that one doesn't get talked about as much. And then with an opportunity to take the lead, or to potentially put South Carolina in an even better spot, he misses the 51-yarder against Alabama this past weekend. Now that was the first 50-plus yard field goal that he's attempted all season, and Kamar Bell did have the holding penalty against him that backed South Carolina up, which put him in the position to have to kick that long field goal. That being said, and I get it, those long kicks are hard, especially for a college kicker. I know we've gotten used to the pros where making 55-yarders is pretty much routine at this point in time, but these are college kickers, and you can't expect them all to be perfect. But I'm starting to get concerned as we get deeper into the season where his headspace is at with this. Because as we've talked about many times, kicking is a psychological thing as much as it is a physical thing. And if you get in your head those doubts as a kicker, you're going to continue to miss more and more kicks. And the fact that he's missed kicks in 3 of the biggest games South Carolina's played this year, all 3 of which South Carolina has lost against LSU, Ole Miss, and Alabama. How does that weigh on you? And especially as you look ahead to this weekend's game against Oklahoma and Norman, points are going to be at a premium. We've talked about it. The defenses are the story of both these teams. This could be a game where, it's 14-10 late in the game or something like that, and field goals become extremely, extremely valuable. And if you're missing kicks in that game, that truly could be the deciding factor between winning and losing this contest. So I really hope he goes out there and has a good, solid weekend where he does not miss any kicks, because he's only had, well, he didn't attempt any kicks against Akron, so I won't count that. But he's only had one game this year where he didn't miss a field goal, and that was against Kentucky. So you're almost kind of counting on it to happen at least once a game. You just hope it's not in the disastrous spot like at the end of the game where it really, really ends up being a big deal. So I had this concern coming into the season. It's something that more and more people are growing more concerned about, and rightfully so, because if you don't have solid place kicking, that again can end up costing you games, as it has when he's been asked to make some big kicks late in these games so far this season. Hope it gets better. I really hope we see just a 180 shift and suddenly he's making every field goal and we don't have to worry about it again. But what I've seen so far through this season with 12 kicks that he's attempted, I don't have the utmost faith in the kicking right now, which is unfortunate because, again, you need all the points you can come by, especially with some of these tough games that you have coming up. That'll do it for today's edition of The Extra Point. Coming up next, Gamecock Central Takeover Hour presented by Firehouse Subs. Myself and Chris Clark on your Wednesday here on The Game. 11 o'clock on your Wednesday morning. Welcome in. It is the Gamecock Central Takeover Hour presented by Firehouse Subs. Tyler and Chris along with you. Wes is dealing with other business. He'll be back in tomorrow as Chris will be taking off to Norman, Oklahoma. So you'll be out tomorrow, but we should be touching base with you again in yet another enemy territory coming up on Friday.
Yes, we will definitely touch base. I will be hard to do the show from a plane.
I wouldn't recommend it.
I'll literally be in the air.
For one, you got to pay for the Wi-Fi, which is never cheap.
I think I might disturb some people.
You
too.
might. They might ask you to stop. How long of a flight is that, by the way?
Well, I can tell you.
You're going halfway across the country.
I assume you do have a time zone change, obviously.
You do.
I think it's about 2 hours.
Okay,
roughly.
well, so realistically, if you left at 11, fly 2 hours, really you're only burning an hour because you're getting there at noon.
Well, it says, so 11:31 Eastern, and then the flight is until 2:27.
Okay.
I don't know if that time's in Eastern. Boy, I hope so. I hope that's also in Eastern time. I don't know how they
I don't know. Flying across time zones is weird. I flew across the Atlantic one time going to Europe, and I think I saw maybe, because it was an overnight flight, I think I saw maybe 2 hours of darkness, which that screwed me up for the entire week. So you're not going to have to deal with that.
You ever eaten a meal on a plane?
I have. A couple, actually.
How was that?
Not too bad.
I've never done it. I've only been, like, the longest flight I've taken, I think, is to California. So it was like 4 hours.
Yeah.
In the morning. So, I mean, we got a snack, I'm sure.
I was on that plane for 10 hours. We ate, I think, all 3 meals.
Oh, boy. Yeah. I don't. At some point, I'll have to do that because there's some places I want to go where you're probably going to have to eat or you're going to be very hungry. So,
but you can take a nap on the plane tomorrow. Are you a plane napper? Can you do that?
I can't. I wish I could buy that capability on eBay or something, but I cannot. I can't sleep on a plane.
I have too much anxiety.
Well, don't start talking about that. Then I'll get anxious.
That's just me in general. I don't know how people sleep on planes, especially with the loud motors. And I'm flying over body water. Hopefully, this thing stays in the air.
Hopefully, it's okay. Yeah, I'm excited about the trip though. You know, I've been fortunate to be able to go to originally this Bama trip. Remember, you know, the SEC schedule changed.
Yep.
And this Bama trip was, if I'm remembering correctly, it was already on the schedule, on the slate for 2024.
Okay.
And so years ago, we were looking at it going, hey, we'll go to Bama in 2024. Our kids will be this old, you know, we'll take them. And it worked out to when they changed the schedule, like that part stayed the same. If I'm remembering correctly, I think that's right. And so this was going to be, the Bama trip would have been our final SEC stadium. Of course, we've now added
2 more.
Texas and Oklahoma. So when we saw, hey, Oklahoma, by the way, is also going to be on the schedule, let's add that thing in. Then they were like, hey, Bama and Oklahoma are back to back. And so we said, well, we kind of already planned on it, so let's go with it. So this will be this will be number 15 if you count South Carolina.
And
then Texas is the only other one.
Well, the good thing is with the new new schedule works, you'll be able to check that off feasibly within the next 3 years.
It'll be 26 or 27.
Exactly, which the ridiculousness of all those weird quirks of scheduling in the SEC, we're like, hey, this team hasn't visited this team in 14 years. Those things no longer exist anymore, which I think is good. And again, we've got basically the same teams next year in the SEC and the other ones we didn't face coming up in 26 and 27 if the schedule continues to stay the way that it is, but that could obviously change between now and then. This trip to Oklahoma is obviously a big one for South Carolina. Can we put the must-win stamp on this?
Nope.
You don't want to do that?
Nope.
Because I think this is a game that South Carolina, on paper, should win on Saturday. And if not, I'm really concerned with how the rest of the season is going to go.
That statement is very fair. Like, it's hard to say a must-win. At some point, say South Carolina advances the season a little bit more. I know it's already halfway over, so that clock is really ticking now. If you're saying must-win in terms of they were in that spot last year.
Yeah.
Hey, you got to win the Clemson game or you're not going bowling, right? They did not win that game. And so we didn't look at that as a must-win because, it's a rival, or a must-win for some kind of subjective type of thing, right? That was, hey, if you want to go bowling, you got to win. So, look, I mean, I think it's a critical, I will say that, a critical game because you are halfway through the season. This is game 7. If you lose, you are now 3-4. You're sitting with a losing record. You've got 5 games left to win 3 games. And as we know, this is a very difficult schedule. It's, that change between what you thought at the beginning of the year versus what you think now, we've seen some of that play out. The Oklahoma game certainly appears more winnable than maybe you would have thought at the beginning of the season. Several reasons for that. Vanderbilt looks more difficult. At the beginning of the year, people are, that'll be a fun trip to Nashville. Go check out Broadway.
They could be ranked by the time you get there.
Yeah. Clemson, you thought that'd be difficult. They get blasted by Georgia game one. Everybody's saying, and now they look, it's hard to tell. They play.
They've beaten teams the way they're supposed to be.
Right. So, but this is, I think, on paper, games aren't played on paper, fortunately. That's why we get to enjoy the sport. On paper, this is one of the more winnable games. So you're sitting there going into this one saying, hey, you're going to pick up a 4th win. Let's go ahead and get that thing now. And there's been so much talk around the team. Beamer talked about this yesterday. Lenore Sellers. I know Wes mentioned the phrase yesterday about you're right at the doorstep, you're right at the door, kick the door down, et cetera. This is one where you have the 2 games against top 10 teams, one at home, one on the road, where you're right there. You're winning going into the 4th quarter, literally. You didn't get it done. And take the next step. Now, Oklahoma's not a top 10 team, right? But they're a name brand program. They're 3-3. You're playing on the road. Go show some growth. Go get a win and get closer toward, being able to achieve the goals. Big goals, maybe those aren't on the table. Like, you're not looking at this team, which people didn't expect this.
Sure.
You're not looking at this team going, they're probably going to make the playoff, right? You've already got 3 losses.
Yeah.
You're not going to go win the SEC at this point. But you still got some goals out there that you can accomplish. You can still show a lot of growth, and I think this game is integral towards going and doing that.
And that's the funny part about the dichotomy between South Carolina and Oklahoma entering this game. Again, Carolina's 3-3. They've not been in the top 25 this entire season. They've lost these heartbreaking games to really good competition in the past month alone. On the flip side of things, Oklahoma is 4-2. They've still got all their goals ahead of them.
You're right.
They were just in the top 25 this past week prior to the Red River Shootout. But if you polled the 2 fan bases, they're probably feeling a whole lot worse about where their team stands right now compared to South Carolina because they've got a litany of issues starting with their quarterback.
Do you remember the number that remember we had Josh McKeeston on from Sooner Scoop? I'm going to try to get him on for tomorrow or Friday, by the way. And he was talking about the expectations, which at a place like Oklahoma can be different.
Coming off of a 10-win year in year number 2 under Brent Venables.
Big extension this offseason. And what's the number he gave? I mean, you got to win 10, basically.
Yeah.
And you're sitting there going, ooh.
Well, it all stems from the belief in Jackson Arnold. Yes. And the story of the offseason for Oklahoma, and Brent Venables alluded to this a couple weeks ago in one of his pressers, was what happened with Dylan Gabriel, where, again, this was a veteran quarterback that helped lead you to that 10-win season that you could have brought back for another year. He wanted to play closer to home. Oregon's, technically closer to Hawaii, but that's not exactly right next door. Regardless, they didn't scratch and claw for him to stay around. If they really wanted to, they could have found what they needed to make an enticing enough offer, NIL, whatever it may be, to keep him around. But they said, it's cool. You can go ahead. Good luck at Oregon. We got Jackson Arnold. We're good. Well, now we're halfway through the season, and Jackson Arnold is buried on the bench right now, and Michael Hawkins is your starting quarterback. So this season is not going anywhere close to what the folks in Norman expected it to be.
Well, yeah, I mean, they showed, the broadcasts in the game against Texas, the rivalry game on Saturday. I mean, they were showing Jackson Arnold more than Michael Hawkins. Just here he is milling around the sideline again, Hey. So I think a few factors. Well, first of all, I mean, Oklahoma's really good on defense.
They are.
Still. It got to the point in the Texas game where, they weren't able to play complementary football offensively because they're not very good. And Texas is really good in all phases, particularly, I mean, on offense, they can score points. So they ended up putting up, 34 points, and Oklahoma couldn't muster anything, scored 3, right? So there are some similarities, actually, between South Carolina and Oklahoma. I think South Carolina probably has more offensive upside and has been a little bit more explosive at times. Oklahoma's been a lot more meh on offense. I know Carolina had the game against Ole Miss. It was extremely meh. But Oklahoma has not been as good there. They're a little bit more limited. Hawkins can run. The issue for them, and they are still talented. I've got star power comparison coming out this afternoon on Gamecock Central. They've been so beat up at receiver. I mean, their top 5 guys have been out.
Yep.
And so that's actually a storyline to watch for this game. Brent Venables said yesterday, Deion Burks, who's their best guy, is at about 80% right now. And Venables said he's trying to, quote, defy all odds and come play. All the Gamecock fans are saying, of course.
Of course he's going to come back for
all
this game.
5 of them will be back. Probably not, right? But that's been huge. I mean, you lose your top 5 receivers. Like, you got to put some level of an asterisk by what you're doing offensively. That said, it's still frustrating, right? They're 4-2. You lose this game, you're then 4-3, and then you start looking at the schedule. They got to go to Ole Miss. They got to go to Como and play Missouri. They host Alabama. They go to LSU, right? So you can very easily see 1, 2, 3, 4. I mean, could you lose 5 of your next 6 games?
Yeah, I mean, Maine's probably the only gimme there, and then you're looking at 5-7.
You're looking at 5-7, and compared to the preseason expectations in year 3, again, people don't really care, fair or not, about your injuries. Yeah. Brent Venables has said, I'm not making any changes this season, in season. So natives are a little restless. This is a big game for them. It's a big game for South Carolina as well.
We'll continue to dive into this, take more look at this offense, particularly around Michael Hawkins and what he's done since coming in for Jackson Arnold a couple weeks ago, as we preview what's going to happen Saturday in Norman between South Carolina and the Oklahoma Sooners. Pregame coverage starting with myself and Terry Ford, 7:30 a.m. on Saturday for that 12:45 kick here on the game in Columbia. It is the Gamecock Central Takeover Hour presented by Firehouse Subs on your Wednesday on the game.
If you are looking for a local, family-owned, reliable HVAC service to work on your AC, or, some people are turning on their heat already. If you need heater repair, furnace repair, AC repair, if you want to look at getting a new system, whatever your needs are on the heating and air front, our friends at Krantz Cooling and Heating can help you. That's Krantz with a K, Cooling with a K, KrantzCooling.com. Since 1983, the Krantz family has been servicing homes and businesses around the Midlands. Outstanding family-owned business. Shout out to Justin Krantz, who's the general manager there. My guy. I had lunch with him not too long ago, a few weeks ago. 803-672-3224. Very involved out in the community. South Carolina folks, 0% APR for 60 months on qualifying equipment. That's one thing. But even better than that, you're going to get local, great service with people who care about you and your family. They've been to my home. They've been to my mom's. KrantzCooling.com. Give them a call.
Welcome back in. It is the Gamecock Central Takeover Hour presented by Firehouse Subs. Tyler and Chris Clark along with you here on your Wednesday. As we dive into Oklahoma coming up this weekend as the Gamecocks look to improve to 4-3 on the season and pick up a win in Coach Beamer's old stomping grounds there in Norman, Oklahoma. Of course, big story around this program, as we talked about in the last segment there, was what's going on at quarterback with Michael Hawkins taking over a couple weeks ago for the highly touted Jackson Arnold, who did not live up to what they thought he was going to be in the first couple games of the year. Hawkins is going to be the starter once again this weekend. Let's go with cut number 7 here, Dave. This is Coach Beamer yesterday addressing the media talking about Michael Hawkins and the Oklahoma offense.
When you look at it, Jackson Arnold, the previous quarterback, did a lot of really good things this year. You watch his tape, and he made some big-time throws, and is a good athlete. And then you watch with Michael, the new quarterback, he's able to make throws, and obviously he brings an athletic element to the position, being able to run as well. So it's a challenge when you face a running quarterback that can improvise and get out of the pocket and make plays. And they've lost some receivers, some of their bigger receivers size-wise. This group they have, though, is still talented, though. They're twitchy, they're athletic, they can make people miss. They're really athletic at tight end and can run, and they rely on those two guys a lot as well. So they present a lot of problems, one, personnel-wise and the uncertainty of some things, but two, they've got, it's Oklahoma. They haven't lacked for, really good recruiting classes, and I don't think anybody said that Oklahoma's ever not been talented. So, yes, they've had some injuries, but they're an extremely talented and well-coached football team on all three phases.
The weird thing about the quarterback debate there is, Jackson Arnold didn't come out and light the world on fire as many people out there thought he was going to, but the change to Hawkins hasn't really been all that different. When you look at their statistics through the games that both guys got to start, those numbers are pretty comparable. The one difference is Michael Hawkins has not thrown an interception, and Jackson Arnold threw 3 in his first couple starts this season. Other than that, though, their numbers are almost exactly the same, which is bizarre when you're talking about a quote-unquote quarterback battle, because I don't think Hawkins has necessarily done anything definitively better than Jackson Arnold.
Well, I think a lot of different angles there, right? I mean, the big one, there's so many layers to this, as there usually are when a team is going through struggles. And I think Venables even alluded to this. People always want to boil it down to one thing, and at the end of the day, if you're struggling on offense, it's your offensive coordinator and it's your head coach. Those are the people responsible for it, right? But if you peel back the layers, it's not usually just one thing, So for Oklahoma, several, right? They haven't found their quarterback yet. I mean, they found it in the sense of they have Hawkins, but he hasn't been amazing.
Right.
If they went back to Jackson Arnold, you say, okay, that makes sense. Their offensive coordinator, Seth Luttrell, has been under fire, right? Because people feel like he's not maximizing things there. Their offensive line has been under fire because they've had struggles. Their receivers, again, 5 receivers out. I don't care how talented or deep you are. If you don't have your top 5 receivers, there is a drop-off.
Yeah.
The interesting thing is, as well, I mean, Beamer talked about this. You look at the fact that they don't have their top 5 receivers, and you may say, okay, well, look up and down this depth chart. Man, they're probably hurting for talent. I mean, I'm sitting there going, the guys that started in their last game, J.J. Hester, Brennan Thompson, and Jaquez Petaway, all former 4-stars, and Thompson and Jaquez Petaway, high 4-stars, right? So, but, that said, if you don't have your top 5 guys, there's a drop-off. I think it's totally fair for Oklahoma fans to have expected more offensively at this point, balancing the fact of, you do have a problem with your quarterback situation. People are kind of second-guessing how they handled that.
And I was listening to the OU Insider podcast yesterday, and an interesting point was being brought up by the two guys on the show. It's kind of like they're playing chess with the quarterbacks as of right now, because, again, Arnold was expected to be your guy. You put all your chips in for him this season, and you let Dylan Gabriel go off to Oregon. Didn't work out. Okay, so now you've moved on to Michael Hawkins. There's a lot of belief, it seems like, in the Oklahoma program that Jackson Arnold is going to transfer out at the end of the season, that there's no saving that relationship. Hawkins is now your guy, even though he's not performing at a super high level compared to what Jackson Arnold was doing. They also have Casey Thompson on the roster, who has started at Texas. He started at Nebraska. He's been playing college football for a very long time, and in fact had a lot of success against Oklahoma in years past. He's there, but there seems to be a hesitancy to want to turn to him where he could potentially put you in a better spot offensively for this season at least, of not wanting to upset Michael Hawkins because now he seems to be your future. So it's all these moving parts that you're trying to navigate, and as of right now, none of them are making sense for trying to win for the Oklahoma Sooners.
Yeah, it doesn't. I mean, you got to have players around your quarterback, right? I think you go to Hawkins because he's going to give you – Jackson Arnold can move, right? But he's giving you – that additional element of he's a pretty dynamic runner. And so if you're South Carolina, that going into this game is probably to dive into the potential game plan a little bit here. That's probably your top thought, right? And you just played a quarterback who's very mobile. They talked about this after the game, the Gamecock defenders did, of just having that lane integrity, of keeping him hemmed in, not letting a guy get to the edge. I think it's going to be similar with Hawkins, right? Although in him, you've got less of a passing attack to worry. Not that it's not a worry, but you've got less of that threat. You don't have Ryan Williams and Jalen Milroe in terms of the passing attack on the other side.
Yeah, and it all starts up front as well, and we know this here very well at South Carolina. If you don't have an offensive line that can protect your quarterback, you're only going to be so successful, and they are legitimately the worst offense when it comes to sacks allowed, so far, or one of the worst in the SEC and all of the nation when it comes to sacks allowed so far this season, something they have in common with South Carolina. And when you look at the numbers, they've given up let's see here, 20 on the season, which is 127th. Obviously, South Carolina is the worst in the nation with what they've allowed so far with, 26. But when you think about this matchup on Saturday, that's where South Carolina can hopefully wreak havoc. When you talk about the pass rush that's been the high point for this team this entire year, just be able to bear down on Michael Hawkins and not give him any opportunity to be successful on Saturday.
Yeah, that, again, this two teams that have some similarities. Much stronger on defense, question marks on offense, mobile quarterbacks, questions at receiver, very much some similarities. And I think Beamer pointed out, I don't know if he dove into these, I can't recall him diving into these sack totals, but he was talking about both defenses' propensity and their ability to turn over the other team. Gamecocks are, I think, 12th in the nation or so in that metric.
Yep.
Oklahoma is 7th, right? So it's been a big problem for South Carolina. Oklahoma's been good on defense. They've given up a lot of sacks on offense. Same for South Carolina, right? So man, I mean, looking at this game very simply, I think you look at the team that's going to make the fewest mistakes is probably going to win. I don't think you can look at this one and go, it's probably a 35-31 type of game. I mean, that would be very surprising.
I was going to ask, does either team crack 20 in this game?
The spoiler alert for my pick is I'm leaning the other way on that.
Okay.
In terms of my score prediction. I haven't finalized it yet, but I do not know if either team could reach that based on what we've seen.
Points are going to be a premium this weekend. There's no doubt about it.
Yeah, and I mean, and look, Carolina's played some good defenses. Obviously, the results against Ole Miss were not what you wanted. Alabama had been struggling, but they are talented. They had played well early in the season. South Carolina was able to move the ball, score points there. Same thing against Kentucky. Same thing against LSU. So they're going to have to do enough offensively to be able to win this game. I think that's your concern. And the biggest one is, ball security is going to be at an absolute premium. This thing, field position is going to be huge. I think it's going to be another game where there's very, very tight margins. But that's not just for South Carolina. That's going to be for Oklahoma as well.
Absolutely. You got to make your case for us coming up next year?
I do.
All right, we'll hit that coming up next. Gamecock Central Takeover Hour presented by Firehouse Subs. Tyler and Chris on your Wednesday here on The Game.
All right, guys, let me tell you about our friends over at Firehouse Subs. It's my lunch recommendation for every day. dinner, catering for the big game. They can take care of all of that for you. 14 convenient locations all around the Midlands. That number is set to grow soon. But no matter where you are around the area, our friends at Firehouse Subs can help you out with your hunger needs. Shout out to Larry Chandler, owner and operator of all 14 Midlands Firehouse Subs locations. Tyler and I were just talking about our next live remote show from Firehouse Subs. I think we're actually going to be potentially, sources say, doing a grand opening at one of the new locations in the Midlands. That'll be a lot of fun. Definitely looking forward to eating there as well. You should too. Check out any of your Firehouse Subs favorites at firehousesubs.com, or my favorite method, use the app, earn yourself some rewards toward future purchases, and it'll be waiting on you. Rapid Rescue to go. Firehousesubs.com or the app.
Welcome back in. It is the Gamecock Central Takeover Hour, presented by Firehouse Subs. Tyler and Chris along with you here on your Wednesday on the game. Coming up tomorrow, as always on Thursday, Coach Beamer will be on Carolina Calls with Todd Ellis here on the game in Columbia and Myrtle Beach. And then following that, 7:30, we have NFL Thursday Night Football, Broncos at the Spencer Rattler-led Saints. Pregame coverage starting at 7:30, kickoff at 8:15. A little bit of a Sean Payton Bowl going on tomorrow night down there in New Orleans. As we make our way through the week, we typically like to do this on Wednesdays. It's time, Dave, for another Make Your Case.
All right, I've got a couple here that are percolating, and depending on how long we talk about them, we may May come up with another one. All right, so here's the first. It's a bigger picture item. We talked earlier about how you're halfway through the season if you're South Carolina. You're going up and down the schedule, and you're saying, hey, there's not a bunch. There's not a bunch. There's not any gimme wins here. Maybe, no disrespect to Wofford.
You hating on the Terriers?
Respectfully. That's really your only one. The rest of them, you're going, okay, yeah, that one will be close. Carolina might be favored in that one. Probably not going to be favored in these couple. Oklahoma's up next. So with 6 games left, Tyler, make your case, bigger picture, rank the games in order of, let's go most winnable to least winnable / most difficult, however you want to couch that.
Okay. 6 more games. Wofford, easily number 1, most winnable. Think that it's going to apply for both of us here.
Bulletin board material.
For
the Terriers.
Yeah, watch out for those Terriers. I got to put Oklahoma at 2 personally, just because they are so inept on offense. If Carolina doesn't shoot themselves in the foot on Saturday, I think they should be fine. It's dangerous. They could be ranked by the time you get there, but Vanderbilt's probably number 3 for me. Okay. Now they're playing very inspired football. They're going to play Ball State this week, and that should be a win. They should be 5-2, and very well could crack the top 25 with that. Let's say Missouri has not impressed me as much this year, and just take a look what they did a couple weeks ago against A&M. I don't care that they blew out UMass this weekend at that high school field that they play at, but Missouri has not looked like the Missouri team from a year ago. Now, that being said, they were definitely a team that got better as the season went along last year. So by the time you're facing them halfway through November, they could be a powerhouse again for all we know. But up to this point, I've not been as impressed with them as I was a year ago. They still got good pieces. Dale Weiss, Luther Bird, and obviously Brady Cook on offense. So that'd probably be number 4 for me in terms of most winnable to least winnable. This is where it gets tricky. I guess I'd have to put A&M at 5. Now, they have exceeded, I think, everybody's expectations. Good, solid team on all fronts. They obviously lost that game to Notre Dame, but have won everything since then. Kind of flying under the radar a little bit. Connor Wegman has looked really good since coming back and playing quarterback. And again, that Missouri game the other weekend was truly a beatdown on all fronts there. You do get that game at home, which helps you out a little bit as opposed to going to College Station. But, man, like you said earlier, Clemson, what we saw in week 1, I mean, we were all ready to write them off. Like, all right, the era of them being a top 10 team seems to be over. They got mauled by Georgia, but again, they haven't played the best competition since then, but they've beat them the way you should beat those kind of teams. And Cade Klubnik looks like he's improved. And again, you've always got a good defense up there. So that right now, going on the road especially, looks like the hardest game that you have left.
Yeah, so a few big picture thoughts. I think my list is going to end up being pretty close to yours. I think you're right about Missouri. Maybe not being quite as good as we thought, but still very capable, right? And look, it's difficult to project games week to week. I didn't think, I'm pretty high on A&M as a team. I didn't think they beat Missouri by, 31 points?
No.
No chance I would have picked that. Week to week, the results are just crazy. Clemson, good defense, on the road. Cade's playing better. Yes, I've got it. The competition, yes, I get it. They can run the football with Phil Maffa. Their offensive line is improved overall, and their receiver core is, I think, improved. So they're playing well. They're doing what they're supposed to. When they play, a non-Wake Forest type team, we'll see. That's part of it. When you aren't as battle tested, you've had one huge difficult test that you failed, right? But it was game 1. So I think still a lot of unknown really about that team. I went back and forth on if Vandy should be moved up, above some others. I went back and forth between whether or not Oklahoma is actually more of a sneaky, difficult game than Vandy. Because, Vandy did beat Alabama. That was very impressive. Beating Kentucky in a tight game, it's not like I'm going, wow, incredible. And the results have been so all over the place in the SEC. I think Oklahoma's more talented overall than Vanderbilt, but Vandy's extremely well coached.
Yep.
Their quarterback's a problem. They're a very old team, veteran team, very well coached. So I've had trouble with that one. I'm going to go Wofford is the most winnable. No disrespect. I'm still going to go with. I'm actually, Tyler, going to say Vandy next.
Okay.
My reasoning: Oklahoma's better on defense. Until South Carolina cannot turn the ball over so much, because I think they can score more on Vanderbilt than they can Oklahoma.
Okay.
If that makes sense.
Yeah.
So I might even adjust this after this week, but I'm going Wofford, Vandy, Oklahoma, Missouri, and then I do have to go the home road thing. So I'm saying A&M and then Clemson.
Okay.
I think Clemson, because of the road, their defense, they do have some they're very capable on offense, I think. That's my order. So pretty close to yours. I think we switched out. I switched out Vandy and Oklahoma, right?
Yeah. I believe that sounds right. And it's interesting. And again, we're just looking at the final 6 games remaining, so we're not counting, what we've seen in the schedule so far this year. But if we go back to like the summertime, we're looking at this entire schedule, and I'm sure we had this conversation a couple different times of ranked games from winnable to least winnable, 1 through 12. I think probably going into the season, we probably would have had Oklahoma towards that lower end based on what they did last year and what we thought they were going to be, especially offensively this season. I think Texas A&M would have been on that higher end of, that game should be winnable. They've fired Jimbo Fisher, and we'll see what Mike Elko is going to be in his first year as a head coach down there and all that stuff. Obviously, Vanderbilt, we had a lot of confidence going into the season. And I would have said Missouri was probably in that 3 to 4 at the back end that you said, oh, man, I don't know about that one, considering how things went on the road in Como last year. And again, this is kind of the overall conversation about what college football has been like with so much parity this year. But it's crazy how much those expectations and thoughts on these teams have shifted in just these 6 games alone.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, that's what's been, you always have that every year. But this year, it's like, okay, I'm going to formulate, here's my here's my takes after midway through the season. We all think we're smart and we know exactly what these teams are and what's going to happen. No, we have no clue this year. I mean, it is extremely difficult to figure out, A, who's going to win, B, how a team's going to look. It's hard. I tried for the purposes of this exercise too, by the way, to not include Missouri's apparent voodoo hex on the Gamecocks and just look at it of what type of team are they?
The Drinkwitz curse.
Yeah, yes, it's wild. Okay, one more. Make your case.
Yeah, go for it.
This will be, I think, a quicker one.
Okay.
Halfway through the season, Gamecocks at 3-3. Make your case. South Carolina does make a bowl at the end of the regular season 2024.
I think they do. Again, it's been a roller coaster through these first 6 games, to say the least. When they're playing their best football, I'm not saying they're one of the best teams in the SEC, but they've shown the ability to compete with what are the best teams in the SEC, LSU and Alabama. Obviously, the game against Ole Miss, they just didn't seem to get off the bus for that one. But when they're on, they're on, and when they're off, they're off. And if you can find a way between Oklahoma, Vanderbilt, and Wofford, I think those are, like we said, the 3 most winnable games that you have left on the schedule. And then maybe you can surprise an A&M at home or a Missouri or whatever. Maybe you go on the road and beat Clemson again. I don't know. But I have the belief that this team can find a way to win at least 3 more. Maybe it's only 6-6. Maybe you get to 7-5 or 8-4. Who knows? But I think I've seen enough of this team from its upside potential that they can win at least 3 more games.
Yeah, at some point you have to stop doing we almost won. You have to stop saying there's potential, and you do have to, kick the door down is a great phrase. You got to break through with it. It's very frustrating to have missed a couple opportunities that you've had to score that big win. You've only really been kind of pseudo blown out in the one game.
Yep.
And you've issued one yourself. The other ones have been very close. I tend to think, Tyler, that the defense can travel for this team, literally on the road and throughout the season. The offense, I think, can be good enough to win. And I do think, I'm not going to say that the turnovers will not be a problem going forward or that it'll revert to the average. It may still be a problem. Will it be as big of a problem as it has been? I think they'll get better. And, the LSU game, it's hard to make heads or tails about what happened in that one anyway. It was so crazy.
Sure.
I think Carolina, spoiler, I think they'll win this weekend. I think they'll beat Wofford. And I think they'll get another one or two, who knows, maybe more in there somewhere to make a bowl.
And we also have to account for, let's just look at Lenore Seller's progression through, and he hasn't played in all 6 games. Obviously, he's played in 4.5, but where he was the Old Dominion game compared to where he was now. He's not perfect, obviously. He's still making mistakes and still turning the ball over and not learning when to take sacks and those kind of things quite yet. But the expectation is that he continues to get better. So what we think about him right now in the middle of October could be vastly different from where he is in November. Maybe he is playing at a much higher level where you are winning against Missouri. Maybe you are going toe-to-toe with Clemson at the end of the year. And I think that's really the catalyst for how the back half of the season is going to go, is what steps and how much, because Seller's a smart kid, right? How much does he learn from the mistakes he's made in these first 6 games to correct those issues in the last 6?
Yeah, you got to allow room for a player to grow. You can recognize that there have been some huge game-impacting turnovers by Sellers. I think people are forgetting some of the plays that he has made, though, and the fact that he is still young and he could still grow. And I think not even could. It's a will. He will grow. For him, it's about balancing that. He talked about that yesterday. It's about balancing let's make a play versus let's live to fight another day. There has to be more of that, and I think that's something he will continue to get better at. My guess is this team still has some turnover issues throughout the season, but can they be better in that department while maintaining their depth on defense and how good they've been there at times? I think so.
With this game this weekend, another chance for you to win the Lawyer Lisa Special Teams Contest. Just go online to 1075thegame.com if you've not already and register. If Gamecocks get a special teams score against Oklahoma, you could win $700 come Monday morning with Bill and Preston on the early game. If not, $800 will roll over to after the bye week when they take on Texas A&M. Again, the Lawyer Lisa Special Teams Contest on 1075thegame.com. We'll come back, wrap up today's edition of the Gamecock Central Takeover Hour presented by Firehouse Subs here on the game.
All right, if you're looking for a great, reliable roofer, let me recommend our friends at Classic Roofing, Joe Reeder and Max Sawyer, both Midlands residents with families who live in the Midlands. ClassicRoofingSC.com or give them a call, 803-590-7870. Their roofing services are expansive. They can do residential. They can do commercial. They're GAF certified. Only about 7% of roofers nationwide have that same certification. Could also take the guesswork out of designing your new roof by going to their website at classicroofingsc.com and using GAF's virtual design tool. Really cool stuff. Roof inspections if you think you have damage, roof installations, replacements, and repairs. That's Joe Reeder and Max Sawyer over at Classic Roofing. Get your free estimate at classicroofingsc.com or 803-590-7870.
Welcome back in. It is the Gamecock Central Takeover Hour presented by Firehouse Subs. Tyler and Chris along with you on your Wednesday. I want to get to a question here on the Firehouse Subs text line in just a second, but we have a chance for you to win another platter from Firehouse Subs.
Yes, 14 different locations around the Midlands, and you can be the recipient of a Firehouse Subs tailgate platter, courtesy of our guy Larry Chandler. Shout out to him, owner and operator, again, of all 14 Midlands Firehouse Subs locations. We're going to have Dave fire up the phone lines. Let's do caller number, let's make it simple, 3.
Sure.
Caller number 3, if you call in 803-404-6100, you can win that Firehouse Subs platter. The way it works, call in. If you're the winner, Dave will get your info. We'll pass it on to our friends at Firehouse Subs. They'll contact you to coordinate the time, the location, the pickup of your tailgate platter. Man, that's a good deal. Awesome
It is
stuff.
a good deal. That'd be a heck of a way to watch the game this weekend with a plate of Firehouse Subs for you and all your friends, certainly. Speaking of Firehouse Subs, got to our text line, and we were talking about the schedule, kind of projecting ahead of South Carolina, hopefully to at least getting back to a bowl game. Nameless texter posed a hypothetical question that I, just out of morbid curiosity, want to entertain. They ask, if they win out, do they make the playoff? Hypothetically speaking.
Parentheses,
hypothetically
asterisk,
speaking.
yeah.
Which,
love it.
It's a fair question, right? Because you'd be 9-3. Now, there's a lot of questions we don't know. Like, I'm not telling you South Carolina is a team that's going to make the playoff. I do not believe that. Personally, I think they can make a bowl game, but I think playoff is a little too high to reach. But let's just say, if chaos continues like it has in college football, Carolina runs through these final 6 games and wins and ends up 9-3 with wins over a likely top 15 Texas A&M team, right now top 10 Clemson team, and a ranked Missouri team, would that be enough?
Well, I hate to do like the cop-out answer, but really, man, doesn't it depend on what the whole landscape looks like around? Like,
sure.
So let's try to answer it first before I tend to do that. Well, it depends. It's going to be close. It's possible. You can't say yes or no, right? Definitively.
Right. And by the way, again, if you're just tuning in, we're not going KSR here and charting our way to the college football playoff. We're responding to a hypothetical question because it is an intriguing thing to ask. Like, what if that did happen? Would that be enough? And we're going into this complete unknown of a 12-team playoff where the only thing we know is if you win your conference championship, you get a top 4 seed. Past that, it's completely open season. And with all the chaos we've seen, there's no telling what gets you in or what doesn't at this point.
Well, so the SEC winner, the winner of the SEC, how many, obviously the answer could be they're undefeated, right? But what is the max number of losses the SEC winner could have? That's a good question.
I think to get to Atlanta, you're probably only having 1 loss, which right now there are 9 teams in the SEC with 1 or fewer losses, and Texas is the only team that doesn't have a loss in so far. Now, conference standings, LSU, Texas, and A&M all have no losses, but I think winning in Atlanta, which that would be your 13th game, you're probably looking at a 12-1 team. So Georgia, Texas, maybe Alabama if they, heat up in the second half of the year or whatever it may be, something along those lines. But I think the loser of the Atlanta game is in anyway. And then we're talking about maybe 1 to 2 more, depending on what happens. Now, again, if chaos continues to reign and, your third and fourth place teams are 8 and 4, maybe we're having a different conversation. But if we think there's going to be a couple 10 and 2 teams in there, then I think that gets in no matter what. It's the 9 and 3 that gets a little murky for me.
Yeah. So if you're 9 and 3, and take any team, not just South Carolina, whoever, that's 9 and 3 in the SEC, they would need some chaos.
Sure.
Like the max chaos to be able to get in at that point. You're not getting in via virtue of the SEC title game at that point. You're going to have to pick up an at-large spot. The SEC is so strong that you would certainly think they're going to get multiple teams in, right? I mean, your SEC title winner's in. Your SEC title game runner-up is in.
Yep.
Wouldn't you think?
You would think.
And then beyond that, how many more do you get? Well, it depends on what happens with all these other at-large spots. Like, what are those teams' records out of? If you're not the Big Ten winner, number 2 in the Big Ten, what do they look like? What's number 3 look like? Big Ten and the SEC should, you would think would get the lion's share of those spots. It seems unlikely that like the ACC runner-up will get in. Is it possible?
But I mean,
it's possible.
If Oklahoma and Miami and Clemson, and Clemson already has the one loss, but if they're 11-1 and Miami's undefeated, then yeah, there's a realistic chance there. And the Big 10 or Big 12 is just a dumpster fire in the best possible way of just, I don't know what's going to happen week to week out there. So who knows what the end of the year looks like with them.
Yeah, I mean, even in an expanded playoff, so again, very hypothetical. Let's say Clemson is undefeated in conference. They've lost to Georgia.
Which quality loss.
Let's say they beat South Carolina, so they're 11-1. They go to the ACC title game and they lose to Miami.
By 3 points.
By 3 points. Miami's in. And you got Clemson there, and Dabo's going to have a sermon on why they should be in, and rightfully so, probably. But then you're sitting there going, okay, here's the SEC. We've got a 2-loss Ole Miss team. We've got a 2-loss or 1-loss Missouri. There's so many. It's going to be hard. Even in an expanded playoff, it's going to be hard.
That's what makes the season so fun, man.
The
unknown and the chaos. And I'm enjoying each and every week of it, and we should have a great weekend of football coming up this weekend as well. We will check back in with you on Friday as you'll be taking off to Oklahoma coming up tomorrow. And, man, hoping for the best on Saturday, certainly.
Yes, sir. It should be fun.
That'll do it for the Gamecock Central Takeover Hour presented by Firehouse Subs. Halftime show, myself, Terry Ford, up next here on your Wednesday on the Game.
Show's over, but we're not finished yet telling you about our great partners here on the Game. Integrated Media can make your audiovisual dreams at your home come true, just like they've done at my home. They've been out to Wes's home as well. They've served a lot of folks that we know around the Midlands. My neighbor, you hear about Grayson Griner on the Game here on one of their spots that they play. They've been around everywhere. They do an outstanding job. Great reputation as a local business. You don't have to use the big box stores to grab a new TV, to get wireless speakers, to see if your internet signal is as strong as it could possibly be. The guys at Integrated Media can help you out with all that. Michael and Nathan, again, I've let them into my home. They do an outstanding job. They can do the same for you. IntegratedMediaInc.com. Give them a call, 803-948-8327. Or if you go on Instagram or Facebook, check out some examples of their past work and what they can do for you at Integrated Media Columbia. That's our guys over at Integrated Media.